Chapter 2027. A giant demon in the heaven-opening state? Han Fei frowned. Judging from the power of the blow just now, this demon plant definitely had the combat power of the heaven-opening state. However, it was hard to say whether this demon plant was real or not, because the demon purification pot didn't read any information about it. But was this thing fake? It might not necessarily be fake. Just like the golden arm he encountered, even if it was fake, it could still hurt him. And this sunflower, even if it was fake, could still cut him in half. Han Fei activated his Dao and activated the invincible eye. Of course, there were strong and weak ones in the heaven-opening state. Han Fei knew that he barely had the power of the heaven-opening state at present. However, this was enough. One was physique strength, one was strength, and the last was speed. However, in terms of comprehensive strength, Han Fei was still far from the heaven-opening state. However, this didn't prevent Han Fei from fighting first. When he saw this sunflower, Han Fei also understood the way to the bronze gate. It must be the black hole in the center of the sunflower's big face. If he could go to the bronze gate, he would have gone there a long time ago. Did they really want to stop him by setting up a heaven-opening state demon plant in the sea? No, the puppet said that his strength was beyond the scope of ordinary trials, so it directly caught him for the ultimate trial. That meant that the ultimate trial corresponded to his level of strength. The top 10 in the chaotic ocean sea all had the power of the heaven-opening state, and he was even more powerful than that. Therefore, Han Fei guessed that the existence of this demon plant was just to test his basic strength. Swish, 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 the dozens of blades that looked like sunflower seeds leaped across the sky. This time, Han Fei saw it clearly. Because the tails of the sunflower seeds were connected to a thread, the distance they slashed out was particularly long and looked extremely ferocious. Han Fei held the infinity water in his hand and turned it into thousands of flying blades, rushing at the sunflower seeds that looked like giant claws. Since he was already here, there was nothing Han Fei didn't dare to do. No matter how powerful this sunflower was, it was only at the heaven-opening state. No matter how strong the heaven-opening state was, he couldn't even escape or reverse time. Different from the situation in the mist just now, Han Fei was very determined this time. Even the old turtle said, "Don't worry. If it comes down to it, I will lend you a hand." Bang, bang, bang. Although the quality of infinity water had been improved, it was still a sea-quelling bizarre treasure after all. It was still far from being a divine weapon. However, it did not mean that the heaven-opening state could resist the attack of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Otherwise, if a heaven-opening stage expert could even block a top-grade sea-quelling bizarre treasure, wouldn't he have to use a divine weapon to kill a heaven-opening stage expert? Thus, when the two of them collided, clang, 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 dense sounds of collisions resounded, and ripples surged out like raindrops in a disorderly manner. It could be said that no one could do anything to the other. This sunflower did not display any special great Dao. When it felt the resistance of the infinity water, all the sunflower seeds exploded together. That scene was really like a storm of pear blossoms. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. With so many attacks equivalent to the power of the heaven-opening state, he certainly couldn't block them. Even if the infinity water could block them, it was under his control. If he tried to block them forcibly, it would only consume his spiritual power, slow down his spirit, and reduce his combat power. Therefore, Han Fei could only use the golden light leap. However, there seemed to be something wrong with the void here. He didn't move forward much after the leap, but instead, he was directly immersed in the waves of the terrifying giant claws. Han Fei was shocked. Since the golden light leap didn't work, what about the ultimate speed he had just comprehended? Although he had inherited the ultimate speed when he inherited the ultimate blade, he certainly didn't have time to study it in such a short time. However, he didn't have time to study it. Han Fei had also inherited this great Dao, so in the countless giant claws of the sunflower seeds, Han Fei was as agile as a shadow. At the moment of each giant claw, he made an instant judgment. He was really dancing on the tip of the blade. If others saw this, their jaws would definitely drop in shock. If they were accidentally slashed, they might be crushed into pieces in an instant. Even if Han Fei could use the Gemini Divine technique to fight the enemies in the form of black and white mist, it didn't mean that these giant claws couldn't hit him. Once they hit him, the black and white mist would be easily cut, and the effect might not be as good as now. Swish, swish, swish. Although the blades were endless, in fact, Han Fei's dodging only happened in the blink of an eye. The whole process was so fast that it took no more than 1 second for Han Fei to dodge the giant claws of the sunflower seeds. There were as many as 10,000 giant claws of the sunflower seeds. At this time, the giant claw of the sunflower seeds actually had the function of retracting. What was shot out was a giant claw, and it was retracted like a sharp sword returning to its shell, extremely fast. Han Fei stretched out his hand and waved, and the infinity water quickly returned. Han Fei turned into a void hand, grabbed a giant claw of the sunflower seeds, and with the speed of its return, he went to the black hole in the middle. But at this moment, the 5 big eyes around the sunflower lit up at the same time. Han Fei had forgotten about this. He really didn't know what these big eyes were for. But the 5 big eyes, like charging lasers, were surging with energy, and the 5 were about to shoot out. F***CK. Is it so high-end? If it was charging lasers, it would also be at the extreme speed, wouldn't it? It would only be faster than him, not slower than him. Therefore, Han Fei made a prompt decision. The infinity water directly wrapped around his body, and the immortal killing aura blocked in front of him without hesitation. Swish, swish, swish. Sure enough, the 5 energy beams intertwined in the middle, forming a light curtain. The enemies didn't hit him at all, but waited for him to break through. Hoo! Dragon transformation technique. Crack! At that moment, Han Fei activated the dragon transformation technique, swallowed a 5th-level Dao pattern pill, and directly broke through. This level seemed to depend on his strength. There was nothing to say. He just had to break through. Like an energy barrier, Han Fei crashed into it, and even the infinity water began to burn. Han Fei felt as if he was passing through the center of the earth, and he was about to be cooked. Han Fei seemed to see his body melting, his flesh and blood blurring, and his vision going blind. He felt that if he rushed into the black hole, he would probably be melted too. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be impatient, because if they rushed forward, they would be melted, and it would be too late to get out. But Han Fei had long suspected that this sunflower was fake, and he even let it hack him once. Although this thing did hack him just now, there was no information, and Han Fei still suspected that it was fake. He suspected that this was still a test of his Taoist heart. Therefore, Han Fei rushed forward without hesitation. Even when Han Fei felt that his consciousness was about to disappear, he didn't turn back time. Swish! At that moment, Han Fei rushed into the black hole, only to feel a coolness all over his body. When he suddenly opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that the scene in front of him had changed. Right in front of him was the misty steppes that were still emitting smoke. And next to Han Fei, it was the puppet that he had seen before. F***CK. Everything is fake. So I've been here for a long time. Han Fei was speechless. This kind of thing, no matter how fancy it was always the same. They were all deceiving you from all aspects, penetrating your soul, body, and mind, but you didn't even know it. Han Fei couldn't help but make up his mind. In the future, he would also do such fancy tests. Just the thought of watching others die under your casual arrangements was exhilarating. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the puppet next to him. I really doubt whether you are real or fake. Of course, the muscular man didn't respond, and the old turtle shouted, I've been deceived too. Han Fei said, I guess you may be suppressed later. I may not even be able to communicate with the source sea. Those ahead may just be appetizers. This road is the most difficult. The old turtle said, "The Void Temple, as long as you don't destroy me." Han Fei felt that he was in his peak state, so he set foot on the road of trial again without hesitation. Since he had already come this far, there was no reason to hesitate anymore. Han Fei walked up the steps step by step, but he didn't feel any pressure or danger. So easy? Han Fei stepped on the 1,000 steps and stood on the steps, only to see that the steps extended infinitely. And in front of him stood a girl in a fiery red dress. Her appearance was comparable to Xia Xiaochan's. However, Xia Xiaochan was born to be cute. If she didn't fight, you wouldn't know that Xia Xiaochan was actually hot-tempered. And this girl was obviously hot, not because of her clothes, but because of her personality. Looking at the big knife next to her that was burning with raging flames, Han Fei knew that she was a strength-type player. Besides, her expression was very cold and arrogant. Just by looking at her, Han Fei felt that he had been underestimated. Before Han Fei said anything, the fiery girl said, "Void Temple, in the final test, you need to answer 3 questions from me and take 3 slashes from me. If you have no questions, you can pass." A faint smile appeared on Han Fei's face. "Go ahead." Chapter 2028. Han Fei didn't expect that the final test would be like this. He was stopped by a little girl to ask questions. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't underestimate this girl. Since she was allowed to take the final test, she couldn't be weak. However, if she asked a question, there would be many possibilities. As long as it was a question, the answer might be different. Of course, he wouldn't take the initiative to cater to her. This was a matter of ideas. If he had to answer a question against his own will, if it was anyone else, they would not be able to accept it. Because everyone had their own ideas, everyone was different. He couldn't just cater to the ideas that didn't match his own just to become a disciple of the Void Temple. The girl asked coldly, "If one day you are faced with a choice, betray the Void Temple or die, what will you choose?" Han Fei said with a smile, "I, Han Fei, will never betray my teammates. Of course, the premise is that these people are really my teammates. We can share weal and woe, and we can live and die together." The girl said, "So, if you don't treat us as teammates, you can betray us without any qualms?" Han Fei said with a smile, "You can think of it that way. I'll treat others the way they treat me. If the Void Temple doesn't treat me well, do you think I'll take it seriously?" The girl glared at him. "Aren't you afraid that the Void Temple will kill you now?" Han Fei sneered. "The Void Temple has set up a lot of tests. I dare not say that I am the strongest and the most talented, but it's not easy for me to get here. I don't think you'll attack me because of this. Otherwise, the Void Temple will be too shameless." With that said, Han Fei said, "Girl, you've already asked 3 questions." However, the girl glared at him again. "I only asked 1. Han Fei was speechless. "Do you not know how to count?" It was 1 question, but 3 questions were generated. We even discussed them. How did it become 1? The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "You're not going back on your word." The girl said, "Just 1. Okay, it's time for you to take my blow." Han Fei was speechless. "Fine, I'll take 1. He would not take advantage of this. The girl said, "Your physique shouldn't be weak, and you can control the art of time. In that case, you won't be able to block this strike. In any case, you can reverse time." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He always felt that he was being watched all the way. Was it this girl? He even knew about his great Tao of time? Han Fei immediately said with a black face, "Did you peep at me?" "Bah." The girl spat. "Who's spying on you?" I know, and I have my ways. You just have to take one of my attacks." "But why can't I block it? Doesn't that mean I can only let you chop me?" Han Fei could sense that the girl was getting impatient. She said, "Why do you have so many questions? In any case, I can't kill you. Watch the knife." Because the flaming long knife was even taller than the girl jumped up and grabbed the handle of the knife, which made Han Fei dumbfounded. However, in the next second, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless, because the girl swung the big knife 3 times. Each swing of the big knife was thousands of meters long, and the flames formed a domain with a whoosh. The scorching flames were even comparable to the five-eyed laser just now. As soon as the knife fell, it was as heavy as the sky collapsing, and the momentum was like thunder in the sky. The sharpness of the blade made the flames flow backward, which looked quite intimidating. Before the knife fell, Han Fei seemed to feel the bones in his body creaking. When the roaring flame wild knife fell, it was aimed at the top of Han Fei's head. F***ck. Aren't you afraid of killing me? Han Fei slightly tilted his head. If his head was blown up by the knife, how could he maintain his image? Clang crack crack crack. Han Fei felt as if a big star was pressing on his body, as if a small world was smashing on his shoulder, and he only managed to resist for 2 seconds. In the 3rd second, he heard his bones breaking, and he was cut from head to waist. His golden blood was almost burnt up, making a sizzling sound. This knife was strong, but Han Fei felt that the girl didn't use the power of the heaven-opening realm. But even so, it at least proved one thing. In the sea-opening realm, there were still people who could break his defense so easily. Even though the girl couldn't cut it in half with a single slash, the distance between them was not far from it. Besides, when the girl attacked, she was quite casual. She just jumped up and held the knife, and took advantage of the momentum to cut him. Obviously, the girl didn't use her full strength. Han Fei directly reversed time and appeared next to her. When Han Fei recovered, he heard the girl say, "Go on." With that, the girl disappeared, and Han Fei had crossed 1,000 steps, and everything around him returned to normal. However, Han Fei didn't know whether this test was easy or difficult. In terms of difficulty, it was indeed easy. But in terms of answering questions, it was unknown. Han Fei shook his head slightly. No matter whether it was possible or not, he would find out later. As long as he stuck to his own idea, it would be over. He was lucky to enter the Void Temple. Even if he didn't enter, he still had the demon purification pot. Unless a strong master of the Void Temple came to kill him, Han Fei didn't think he would die here. When Han Fei stepped on the steps again, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. Why was there no power blocking the steps behind? Was the last test so easy? Han Fei crossed 1,000 steps in one breath and soon reached the 2,000th step. He was very fast. However, when he just reached the 2,000th step, he saw a girl standing in the same style as just now, with a broadsword stabbed diagonally next to her. Han Fei was surprised. "Why are you here again?" The girl frowned. "Why are you here so fast?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I didn't encounter any obstacles when I came up. Of course I came here fast. Not to mention me, even if it was anyone else, they would also be here in a flash, okay?" But Han Fei didn't know why the girl asked this. He couldn't help but ask, "Then, how slow should I be?" The girl said, "You should think about why it was so easy for you to climb without any obstacles." Han Fei was also puzzled. "Why?" The girl was also speechless. "Because you will face me again, and I will make you feel fear. You will be under pressure from the bottom of your heart." Han Fei didn't think so at all. "I thought you were just a projection that would be gone after the first test. I didn't expect that your projection would be so strong and remember what happened just now." Seeing Han Fei's blank expression, the girl was also speechless. She said angrily, "This time, you need to answer one more question of mine and take one attack from me. You can try to resist this attack." Han Fei asked, "That's it?" The girl. Han Fei didn't mean to belittle her. He just felt that there was no difference between 1 or 2 attacks from this girl. "You can just let me pass. I don't have to climb the stairs to wait for the test. You are already a king, but you still have to take this test every day. It's so annoying." The girl snorted coldly. If you want to enter the Void Temple, you must have the strength to enter the Void Temple. Watch the knife. With that, the girl pulled the knife again. However, this time, Han Fei was fascinated. Because the fiery saber was still stuck in the ground, the girl jumped up and grabbed it, only to grab a saber-shaped flame. The girl jumped up and held the fiery saber that looked like a clone with both hands. In the air and around them, sparks were drifting. In Han Fei's eyes, what he saw was not a knife. What he saw was that in the world in front of him, there seemed to be flames from the outer space, slashing down from the sky and leisurely. This knife was very slow, but it was indeed terrifying. The scene was like the end of the world, as if a huge star had crashed and annihilated this world. More importantly, Han Fei felt a tingling pain in his soul. It turned out that this was not an attack aimed at his body but at his soul. This terrifying power was actually the impression of this saber in his divine soul. Han Fei gasped. If he was hit, would his soul be in danger? If he didn't make it in time, it would be too late for him to reverse time. Therefore, Han Fei stretched out his hand, grabbed the embroidery needle, gathered the power of his soul, and moved his body slightly, but the air around him was surging. On the embroidery needle, ripples appeared one after another, which showed how powerful Han Fei was. Divine Stab. Divine Stab was the strongest soul attack that Han Fei knew. Although its level was not high enough, compared with the 100-beast soul-devouring roar, its single explosive power was far superior. Most importantly, the level of combat skills didn't make much of a difference in the hands of a powerhouse like Han Fei, except for the particularly heaven-defying combat skills and divine arts. So, the knife had already been slashed down. The only thing that Han Fei could use was the heavenly god stab, which made Han Fei realize the shortcoming of his soul combat power. Chapter 2029. B'em Pucci. When the two forces collided, Han Fei realized how powerful the girl was. She gave him a lot of opportunities to accumulate power, but when faced with this attack, the only thing the divine thorn could do was to protect himself. 1 second. 2 seconds. By the 8th second, Han Fei's divine thorn was almost disintegrated and couldn't resist the violent attack at all. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Was it because the time the girl gave him to climb the 1,000 steps was actually for him to build up his strength, and he rushed up without thinking? However, at this point, Han Fei could only take it head-on. Tutu, 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 tutu. Under his feet, Taoist patterns appeared and the soul-driving array crazily wrapped around him. At the moment when the divine thorn was about to collapse, a golden light burst out of the invincible eye, and Han Fei's invincible heart beat violently. With Han Fei's crazy roar, Han Fei was gradually completely exposed to this terrifying soul-slaying fire. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. Han Fei was relying on his powerful spiritual strength. As a newly advanced king, Han Fei's spiritual strength had already reached a level that ordinary sea expansion experts couldn't hope to reach. That was because he could constantly devour and absorb. Of course, the premise was that there were so many souls to swallow. Of course, the reason why Han Fei chose to take this attack head-on was the demon purification pot. Although Han Fei only knew that his spiritual heritage seemed to be amazing and that his potential might be great, the girl opposite him was indeed strong. However, the young lady in front of him was indeed powerful. Her strength was too terrifying. A casual strike from her could cause the heavens and earth to change color. Moreover, she didn't seem to use much strength. This was what was truly frightening. Han Fei was speechless. She was just a tester. He guessed that this girl should be one of the people in the Void Temple, but not her real body. It was hard to say. Han Fei didn't think she was. He had never heard of a strong master who could safely descend into the chaotic ocean sea. Otherwise, how could Xia Xiaochan have survived to this day? When Han Fei persisted until the 38th minute, he finally couldn't hold on any longer. In his mind, shouting finally took action. Even though Han Fei was wrapped in endless waves of fire and his soul was like a small boat in the raging waves, the flame slash could no longer shake Han Fei's soul. In front of Han Fei, the girl seemed to see the result from Han Fei's expression. She stretched out her hand and squeezed in the void. The endless waves of fire receded like a tide and quickly disappeared without a trace. Who? Han Fei was sweating and panting. The Void Temple was indeed not to be underestimated. Any one of them could easily crush him, which was not something to be happy about. He heard the girl say, "Considering that you haven't reached the pinnacle of the sea expansion realm, and your divine soul is still passable, just barely. Now answer my question." Han Fei didn't care about the girl's comment. Panting, he said, "Go ahead." The young girl. "If one day you need to sacrifice yourself to save all races, would you be willing?" "I'm not willing." The girl's face immediately darkened and she said, "Why did you answer so quickly?" Han Fei said with a smile, "Hey, what does it have to do with me whether or not there are 10,000 races? You want me to sacrifice myself to save them? Why?" The girl stomped her feet. "Selfish. That's unacceptable." Han Fei sneered. "Let me give you an example. I can fight against the whole world for the person I love, but I won't hurt the person I love for the world. I don't have any righteousness. Everything must come from the heart." "Humph." The girl glanced at Han Fei coldly. "Just keep climbing." With that, the girl disappeared again. However, this time, when Han Fei looked at the last 1,000th step, he couldn't help but think that the first 1,000th step was a test of his body. The second 1,000th step was a test of the power of his divine soul. Relatively speaking, without the demon purification pot, he might not have been able to resist it. Obviously, the girl ran up to wait for him again. He didn't care about the third question. What he cared about was what this level was to test. His body and divine soul had been tested. According to the girl's personality, what else could she test? Han Fei couldn't help but want to communicate with the old turtle, but after he called out and there was no response, Han Fei knew that the old turtle had been blocked. As usual, Han Fei shook his head slightly. He didn't know what the next test was, so he didn't need to prepare for it. So Han Fei grinned. "How could I be fooled by a little girl?" Then Han Fei quickly stepped up the steps and passed the 1,000th step in a hurry. Sure enough, when Han Fei stood on the last step, the incomparably huge bronze gate fell straight in front of him. It was so high and so wide that it seemed to be endless and magnificent. In front of the bronze gate, the girl was already waiting there like the previous 2 times, and the scorching fire long knife next to her was stabbed diagonally into the ground. The girl said, "Well, fortunately, you were not fooled by me and came up soon. Otherwise, your points would have been deducted." Han Fei. Han Fei was speechless. "Is there a deduction for points?" Han Fei said, "Wait, did you give me points all the way here? What's the full score? How much did I deduct?" The girl said, "Anyway, your score is not high." Han Fei. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "What do you mean my score is not high? Isn't my journey perfect enough?" The young girl said, "This trial will depend on your comprehension." Han Fei had never thought about this kind of test. Understanding was hard to say. Although they were all cultivators, their brains were quite developed. But this kind of development was more reflected in memory, spatial ability, and so on. However, this had nothing to do with being smart and quick-witted, nor did it have much to do with comprehension. Comprehension and intelligence were mostly based on knowledge and experience. Only then did one's imagination come into play. So when the girl said this test, Han Fei's face turned serious, knowing that the real problem was coming. Han Fei said, "How long do I have?" The girl said, 7 days. "I won't disturb you in 7 days. But in these 7 days, you can't connect to the origin sea, nor can you leave here. You can only comprehend." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Okay, what's the question?" With a flip of her hand, the young lady tossed out 2 items. Thud, one of them hit the ground heavily, making a muffled sound and even forming air wave. Han Fei looked at it and found it very familiar. Isn't this the gravity magnetic force? This thing can suppress the king crab for tens of thousands of years. Han Fei was tired of carrying it, and the other item turned out to be a red, beautiful, and gorgeous feather. The girl said, "Since you are on the path of body refinement, I'll let you comprehend a concept. Let me ask you, if these two items fall from the same position in the void, which one will land first?" Han Fei looked at the girl deeply. "Are you sure this is the question?" The girl nodded. "I'm sure." Han Fei asked, "Didn't I say I would teach you 3 moves and answer 3 questions?" The girl said, "The third question comes first, and the third move comes later." Han Fei asked, "Do you think I look like a retard?" The girl, she said impatiently, "This is about the profound meaning of strength. If you comprehend it, your strength will probably rise to a higher level." The corner of Han Fei's mouth shivered, and his heart was full of disdain. But suddenly, he came to a sudden realization. He had always treated cultivation as cultivation, and it seemed that he had never thought about these problems. Sigh. Was the gravity experiment helpful to strength? In a normal world, of course not. However, was this a normal world? This was about the Great Tao. Space, time, everything could become the Great Tao and everything could be cultivated. At this time, such a scientific experiment might become an epiphany. Han Fei said, "Why don't I take your third attack first?" The girl said, "I told you to comprehend it, so comprehend it. If you can't even comprehend it, you are not qualified to take my third attack." Han Fei. After that, the girl sat cross-legged and began to rest with her eyes closed. Han Fei said, "Well," the girl said impatiently, "comprehend it quickly." Han Fei was lost for words. "Do I have to comprehend it?" Of course they landed at the same time. The girl said, "Huh. All of a sudden, the girl opened her eyes and looked at Han Fei in shock. Her first reaction was, "Have you comprehended this before?" The girl was speechless. "That's impossible." Judging from Han Fei's performance in the battle, he obviously didn't know this. How could he give the answer so quickly? Han Fei shook his head. "To be honest, if you didn't ask me, I wouldn't have thought of this." The girl pointed at the gravity and the feather and said, "You just took a glance and comprehended it?" Han Fei's lips curled. "Do I need to comprehend it? I think you are insulting my intelligence." "Hiss!" The girl glared at Han Fei for a while, and then looked back at the bronze gate. After dozens of seconds, she finally came back to herself. Well, take my last attack." Han Fei was shocked. It seemed that the hardest part was yet to come. The girl jumped up, grabbed the hilt of the knife, pulled up the raging fire broadsword, and threw the broadsword at Han Fei. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What does she mean? Is she looking down on me? Or does this move have a deeper meaning? Why did she throw the knife at me so lightly? Is this knife very heavy? Or is it very hot? Swish. Han Fei grabbed the handle of the knife, only to feel that his whole body was hot, his blood was boiling, and his qi and blood suddenly expanded. However, although this big knife was very heavy, it seemed to be a little lighter than the gravity and magnetic force. In Han Fei's eyes, information immediately emerged. Name Phoenix Feather Wild Knife. Introduction. It's made of the feathers, blood essence, claws, gravity, and void fire of the divine beast Phoenix. With the Wind Feather Wild Knife, it can make your qi and blood soar and increase your strength by another 10%. When fighting with the Phoenix Feather Wild Knife, your strength can be increased by 30%. Quality. Mid-quality divine weapon. Spirit attachment. None effect. Agitation of qi and fire resistance. Recastable. Unrefined. Note: when the phoenix feathers are spread, they cover the sun and the sky, like a catastrophe. Magnificent. When Han Fei realized what was going on, the girl snorted coldly. "You're not bad. Bonus points for the third level. This knife is a gift." Han Fei. Chapter 2030. Dumbfounded, Han Fei held the mid-quality divine saber in shock. So, by taking 3 strikes from her, did she mean that the last strike would be given to him? A mid-quality divine weapon? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Was this saber the reward for passing the test of the Void Temple? What kind of people were these people from the Void Temple? Did they just throw divine weapons around? Seeing Han Fei's dumbfounded look, the girl in red snorted. How did you figure out the key at a glance? Han Fei almost blurted out that he had learned the iron ball experiment where 2 balls fell at the same time. Because there was gravity in this world. Of course, he wouldn't tell her the answer. Han Fei simply said casually, I figured it out. The 2 of them stared at each other for a moment, but the girl in red didn't intend to get to the bottom of it. He heard her say, Follow me. The girl in red turned around and came to the bronze gate, holding a bronze token with the number 11. When the bronze token was pressed on the bronze door, there was a ka-ka-ka sound, and the huge bronze door slowly opened. Han Fei was surprised. Are you not a projection? The girl replied, Of course not. I'm here just to wait for you. Now that you have passed the final test, you will be my junior brother from now on. Han Fei was overjoyed, thinking that the final test was a bit easy. Of course, it was just Han Fei's opinion. It was hard to say whether it was really simple or not. Not everybody could survive the girl's 2 strikes. There must be a lot of people who couldn't understand the gravity test. Han Fei actually had an epiphany. If he could create a vacuum battlefield or a domain, he would definitely become stronger. There was no doubt about that. The bronze gate slowly opened to a gap that could only allow 2 people to pass through. Han Fei followed the girl in red. This was the 3rd time that Han Fei had come to the Void Temple. From beginning to end, he only saw nothingness. Except for the girl in red, Han Fei hadn't seen the real appearance of anyone else. When Han Fei followed the girl in red into the gate, he seemed to have stepped on the horizon and stepped into a hazy mist. It was still the same mountain that he had come to before. Before Han Fei had time to look around, he heard many voices shouting, Congratulations, junior brother. The voices came one after another. Han Fei looked up, only to see that the huge eldest senior brother, who occupied half the sky, seemed to be looking at him. However, the 2 seemed to be separated by an endless void, so Han Fei couldn't see his face at all. Then, Han Fei heard someone laughing behind him. Ha ha, what did I say? Little junior brother has finally become a member, hasn't he? At the bottom of the mountain, in the waterfall pool, the laughter of a woman could be heard. A female voice said, We also made a bet that junior brother would definitely be able to enter the sect. Voila! He saw a giant eagle circling in the sky. It flapped its wings and landed on eldest senior brother's knees. The eagle said in a crisp voice, In less than 3,000 years, the Sky Temple has recruited another disciple. Congratulations! Han Fei looked back and saw the giant skeleton that was as tall as the mountain said, 11, you don't have to worry about the future assessments anymore. The girl in red who led Han Fei here said, It's really tiring. But it's really hard to find a good place to recruit people in such a chaotic world. The girl in red looked at Han Fei. Little junior brother, your first task after joining the sect is to choose suitable people to join the Sky Temple in the future. Of course, it's not that urgent. You can play for 10,000 years and recruit people in the future when you have the idea. A dragon flew over from the sky and said with a smile, Little junior brother, don't listen to 11. Recruiting people is an opportunity. Just let nature take its course. Han Fei was dumbfounded to see the mysterious experts show up. He didn't know anything yet. Quiet, the eldest senior brother's gentle voice echoed in the sky, and the senior brothers and senior sisters that Han Fei didn't know at all also quieted down. The eldest senior brother said, 11, lead little junior brother into the sect. The girl in red bowed to the eldest senior brother. Yes, eldest senior brother. The girl in red looked at Han Fei and said, 12. You should know that when you see eldest senior brother and the others, they are separated by the endless void, so you can't see their faces clearly. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Did I just become 12? I don't even have a name? Han Fei nodded stiffly. Of course, I already know that. As if sensing Han Fei's embarrassment, the girl in red said, It's just a name. Before you come to the sea realm and see the world, when you meet your senior brothers and senior sisters, you can't see them, so you don't need to know their names. In the future, when you come to the sea realm and meet your senior brothers and senior sisters, it won't be too late to get to know them. Originally, there were a total of 11 people in the Sky Temple. After you come, there will be 12, so we can only call you little junior brother. When you recruit someone, you can become 12th senior brother. Han Fei thought to himself, they still don't trust me. I've just joined the Sky Temple, so it's understandable that they don't trust me. Otherwise, they should at least tell each other their names. At this moment, the giant eagle said, Little junior brother, don't think that we don't trust you. In fact, most people in the Sky Temple don't know each other, nor do we know their names. But if you have a chance to meet them someday, you will know them, and we won't hide anything from you. Han Fei nodded slightly. Understood. Then shall we just call each other by numbers? The girl in red smiled and said, You can make up a name for yourself. Don't be too particular about it. I'll introduce you one by one. Eldest senior brother naturally doesn't need me to introduce you. Eldest senior brother is eldest senior brother, and eldest senior brother is how I address you. The girl in red pointed at the giant eagle on the eldest senior brother's knee and said, This is second senior sister. You can call her senior sister Kagura. Although senior sister Kagura looks dignified, she has a good temper. Then the girl in red pointed at the big skeleton. This is third senior brother. You can call him senior brother undead. He's not scary at all. He's one of my favorite senior brothers. The one flying in the sky, fourth senior brother Azure Dragon, is so annoying. He often scolds me. Cough cough. Girl Feng Yu, how can you slander your senior brother like this? Azure Dragon couldn't stand it anymore and shouted in a dignified voice. But the girl in red didn't take it seriously at all. She pointed at another mountain and said, That's fifth senior brother, who calls himself Elder Tianwang. He's the most heroic and likes to drink. Let me tell you a secret. If you need treasures, you can find fifth senior brother. Han Fei immediately felt uncomfortable. Are you sure you told me this in secret? Who the hell didn't hear it? Then the girl in red waved at the lotus in the pool. Senior sister Green Lotus and senior sister Red Lotus rank 6th and 7th respectively. After that, he saw Feng Yi turning around and looking around. A clear and cold voice shouted, I'm here. Han Fei looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a thin figure on a tree on the cliff. Feng Yu said, This is senior sister Dark Shadow. She ranks 8. Feng Yu turned around and pointed at the bug who had chatted with Han Fei. This is senior brother 6 Gods. He ranks 9th and is from the insect clan. I don't know which clan he is from. Then Feng Yu shouted at the sky, Senior brother Heavenly Thunder. Boom. A bolt of lightning streaked across the void, and in a flash, Feng Yu said, This is senior brother Tianlei, ranked 10th. In the end, Feng Yu pointed at herself. Look, we've met before. This is my real appearance. I'm Feng Yu, ranked 11th. Come on, call me senior sister. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Damn, I can't call her senior sister. He felt that this lass was like his own daughter, blabbering on and on. She's completely lost her previous ferocity. Seeing that Han Fei didn't speak, Feng Yu said, By the way, the Void Temple has a tradition. After you change your name, there will be a greeting gift. Han Fei was refreshed. There's a greeting gift? Immediately, Han Fei said in a booming voice, Greetings, senior sister 11th. Feng Yu clenched her fist and shook it. I'm finally not the youngest. 12th junior brother, I've given you a greeting gift. Han Fei was stunned. Thinking of the phoenix feather wild saber, he thought to himself, she must be rich to give me a mid-quality divine weapon. At this moment the eldest senior brother said, you have to give him a greeting gift, but don't spoil it. Don't let it affect junior brother's cultivation. Han Fei roared in his heart. It won't affect him at all. I don't mind having too many divine weapons. At this moment, senior sister Kagura said, Junior brother, have you decided what you want to call yourself? Han Fei thought for a while. These people didn't seem to hide their race and characteristics. It seemed that there was no need for him to hide it. Han Fei said, Human King. Senior brothers and senior sisters, you can call me Junior Brother Human King. Everyone. Burp, the fifth senior brother burped and muttered, why do I want to slap him so much? Chapter 20:31. Speaking of which, Han Fei could get a gift when he was called a senior brother or a senior sister. He thought of the calabash that fifth senior brother gave him and the phoenix feather wild knife that Feng Yu gave him just now. Han Fei said, Junior brother, nice to meet you, eldest senior brother. The eldest senior brother replied with a gentle voice. He then casually tossed a star shell over from the boundless void. Han Fei glanced at it, only to find that it was packed with a star shell. Han Fei picked it up and scanned it with his senses, only to find that it contained a whole star shell's spiritual spring. Han Fei was shocked. Is eldest senior brother so stingy? He's giving me divine weapons, but you're giving me spiritual spring? Not that I'm bragging, but if the spiritual spring in my origin sea hadn't been drained by the calabash, there would have been a whole river of spiritual spring in my origin sea. However, Han Fei realized that the spiritual spring that eldest senior brother gave him was more than the part that was drained by him. Han Fei thought to himself, that's not bad. I don't know how long it would take if I were to do it myself. Junior brother, thank you, eldest senior brother. Then, Han Fei said to the eagle, nice to meet you, second senior sister. Not bad. You should stabilize yourself in the pioneer sea level and cultivate slowly. Then he saw a star shell thrown at him. Han Fei knew that it must be a popular star shell outside. Han Fei grabbed it and scanned it with his senses. Damn, 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei was lost for words. It seemed that second senior sister had inherited eldest senior brother's stinginess. In order not to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm, she gave him what she could. Of course, the amount of 10 billion top-grade spirit stones was just right for him. Although it couldn't make up for the resources that were swallowed by the demon purification pot, it was equivalent to 30% of the resources. In such a way, together with the spiritual spring that eldest senior brother gave him, and the essence of the earth veins that his origin sea and the demon purification pot didn't absorb, the quality of his origin sea could be restored to about 80%. Then, Han Fei called them one by one. Senior brother Spectre. He gave him 10,000 streams of chaotic energy. Senior brother Azure Dragon gave him 100 mother loads. Senior brother Heaven Desolate had already given him the calabash. Senior sister Green Lotus and senior sister Red Lotus gave him 100,000 seed. Senior sister Dark Shadow was surprisingly generous. She gave him a piece of black-yellow soil, which made Han Fei very excited. Senior brother Lu Shen gave him an insect egg that was nourished in the chaos spring water, saying that it was for him to plow the land. Seeing that everyone had given enough, senior brother Heavenly Thunder didn't know what else to give, so he gave Han Fei a jade slip, which recorded his understanding of the lightning tribulation. It was obvious that his senior brothers had given him abundant resources from the origin sea. These resources could not be said to be a lot, but they greatly replenished his origin sea. Although Han Fei felt that there was still a big gap between the spiritual spring and the ultra-quality spiritual stones. However, in terms of replenishing his other resources, he could practically decorate his current origin sea to an almost perfect degree. Therefore, except for fifth senior brother's calabash and phoenix feathers broadsword, the actual resources Han Fei got from the Void Temple were not much, but not little either. After all, this was just a greeting gift. After taking the resources, Feng Yu said, "All right, next is the induction ceremony. Eldest senior brother, take me back." Eldest senior brother nodded imperceptibly. The endless void seemed to be penetrated by the sunlight, and then a huge hand pushed open the endless void, which was as wide as the sky. Feng Yu leaped into the air, crossed the heavy fog, and landed on eldest senior brother's big hand, as if she was going to follow this hand through the endless void. Feng Yu said, "Little junior brother human king, we will wait for you in the sea realm." As the big hand retracted, after more than 10 minutes, Feng Yu's voice sounded again on the skeleton of senior brother undead. "I'm here again." Han Fei was still deeply shocked at this moment. God knows how far this eldest senior brother is from the chaotic vast sea. He can send people here and take them back. No one can come to the chaotic vast sea? Look at my eldest senior brother of the Void Temple. He can come and go freely. The guardian of the martial Emperor City didn't even show up. Not to mention anything else, even if Han Fei had a clear way to leave the chaotic vast sea with the fastest speed of the golden light leap, it would not be as simple as eldest senior brother, who could reach an unreachable distance with one hand. What kind of power could measure him? The heaven-opening state? Are you kidding me? If the heaven-opening state was so strong, would the old turtle be reduced to this? Emperor? Han Fei thought to himself. Although he didn't know what realm a emperor was, he couldn't even guess the peak of the heaven-opening state. However, Han Fei was sure that this eldest senior brother was definitely a venerable emperor, and not just an ordinary venerable emperor, but a very strong one. Otherwise, how could he enter and leave the chaotic vast sea so casually under the nose of other emperors? Han Fei even felt that Feng Yu and the others were at least at the heaven-opening realm. If not, how could they take out a divine weapon so easily? Before getting the green gourd, he had never heard of divine weapons at all, and the limit of his knowledge was sea-quelling bizarre treasures and human holy weapons. While Han Fei was still immersed in all kinds of conjectures, he heard eldest senior brother's gentle voice, as if the world was chanting, "Little junior brother, before the entrance ceremony, you must know some rules. After entering the Void Gate, you can't kill innocent people and do whatever you want. But after entering the diabolism, you can't walk the evil path. All races are equal, and there is no distinction between them. To suppress the ominous, you must do your best. You must not expose your identity as a disciple of the Void Gate to outsiders, or you will only face endless pursuit." The so-called rules were actually not many, but it showed the bottom line of the Void Temple. In the end, eldest senior brother said, "The Void Temple has two old enemies. One is the Immortal Temple, and the other is the Temple of Time. The root of the enemy is the disagreement of ideology. Time is extreme and immortal is stubborn. You have the great way of time. If you don't die on the way, you will definitely meet people from the Temple of Time in the future. You can distinguish right from wrong." Hearing this, Han Fei's heart suddenly became solemn. Sure enough, the three temples were opposed to each other. However, according to eldest senior brother, it seemed that the Immortal Temple and the Temple of Time were also enemies. They became enemies because of the disagreement of ideology. This reason was simply irrefutable. It was just that he did not know what sort of opinion the three god halls had that caused them to be hostile toward one another. Of course, this was not something Han Fei should consider. What Han Fei should consider was how to achieve the Pioneer Sea Realm. Although he didn't know what the Sea Realm looked like, Han Fei had a hunch that he was about to get in touch with it. And that was the ceiling of strength in the known world. Even eldest senior brother was there, which meant that there should be a lot of venerable emperors there. If there were gods, they would naturally be in the so-called Sea Realm. Therefore, Han Fei was very calm at the moment. He knew that he still had a long way to go. He couldn't think that he was invincible in the world just because he called himself the King of Man. Even though he had 2 heavenly veins, the highest one was only ranked 800. This had already told Han Fei that whether it was talent, spiritual heritage, or potential, he might not be the strongest. Therefore, he had to wait for the future. Eldest senior brother shouted softly, "Calm your mind." Next to him, Han Fei's senior brothers and sisters all stared at him without saying a word. It seemed that they attached great importance to this initiation ceremony. Han Fei's head buzzed when he heard eldest senior brother's shout. Then, he seemed to see a wooden stick that seemed to pass through layers of the void. It descended on top of his head. Thud! Han Fei was hit by the wooden stick. In an instant, flowing light overflowed and dazzled. Thousands of rainbows surrounded the void. In Han Fei's mind, a large number of complicated and mysterious Taoist patterns, talismans or Taoist patterns, appeared. Han Fei didn't know what they were, but it seemed that these Taoist patterns had been imprinted in his mind. In addition to these Taoist patterns, Han Fei felt power. Black and yellow qi, chaotic qi, immortal qi, ferocious qi, evil qi, death qi, time qi, and all kinds of inexplicable powers that Han Fei didn't know about, as if they were trying to leave some impression on Han Fei. After feeling these powers, Han Fei's mind was still hazy. In the deepest part of these powers, Han Fei seemed to see darkness. In that darkness there seemed to be a kind of power calling him. Han Fei didn't know where it was and who was calling him. He guessed that this might have something to do with the origin of the Void Temple. He wasn't even qualified to see eldest senior brother or even Feng Yu. It was naturally too early to talk about the origin of the Void Temple. Therefore, Han Fei didn't tell them about it. He just thought that this was something that all the people who had accepted the initiation ceremony of the Void Temple knew. When this imprint ended, eldest senior brother said, "With this imprint, you will be a real disciple of the Void Temple. This imprint can be used 3 times. In a life and death situation, or when you feel that you need help, you can choose to ask the Void Temple for help. Remember, you only have 3 chances." Chapter 2032. The mark in Han Fei's head represented the Void Temple. The so-called 3 chances could basically be said to be 3 death exemption medallions. Or, if he wanted to do something that he couldn't do, he could use this imprint. This was already a great opportunity. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Eldest senior brother, do we have regular gatherings in the Void Temple? How did I get here?" The eldest senior brother's voice was unhurried. "When you need a meeting, I can open a gate for you through the mark in your head." The 5th senior brother said, "Little junior brother, don't ask eldest senior brother about such trifles. Senior brother, let me explain it to you." Gulp. Burp. The 5th senior brother gulped down a mouthful of wine. Han Fei could even smell it. He chuckled and said, "Generally speaking, the Void Temple has a small gathering every 10 years and a big gathering every 100 years. But if someone is in seclusion or it's inconvenient, he doesn't have to come. You can even start a gathering yourself." "Me?" The 5th senior brother said, "As long as you light up the mark in your head with the power of your soul, you can tell eldest senior brother the information in a short way. Under normal circumstances, eldest senior brother would inform us. As for whether we can come or not, it depends on what it is or whether we are free." Han Fei was surprised. This method was really amazing. Didn't it mean that he could contact his senior brothers and senior sisters scattered all over the world in a short time in this way? Although it didn't seem to be meaningful to him for the time being, it was really awesome. Han Fei cupped his hands. "Thank you for your advice, 5th senior brother. By the way, can I learn some basic skills after entering the Void Temple?" With that said, Han Fei looked at eldest senior brother. Last time he met eldest senior brother in private, the cultivation method he saw was called a basic cultivation method, but which cultivation method was ranked in the top 10 of the sea expansion list among the 10,000 races in the vast sea? The eldest senior brother seemed to understand what Han Fei meant. Two glowing techniques appeared in the void. Seeing that the eldest senior brother released them, Han Fei was slightly relieved. It seemed that he didn't need to hide it from his senior brothers and senior sisters. Senior brother Lu Xun, who went to listen to the insect race, said in surprise, "These two sects? Junior brother, you're really radical." Senior brother Azure Dragon said, "The void body refinement technique is not easy to practice." Senior apprentice sister Kagura said, "The void heaven observation art is not bad. If you successfully cultivate these two arts, there will be very few people in the sea expansion realm who can beat you." Feng Yu said, Big brother, why didn't you pass the first void technique to little brother? It's so powerful." Han Fei's ears pricked up. "The best void technique? What kind of spell is that?" However, the eldest senior brother said gently, "It's not that I don't want to pass it on, it's just that it's not suitable. The so-called ranking of cultivation techniques is just a man-made ranking. It's still unknown who's stronger and who's weaker when it's actually used." Han Fei secretly licked the corner of his mouth. He didn't think there was anything wrong with what eldest senior brother said. Indeed, suitability was the most important thing. Besides, he had the demon purification gourd. If it didn't work, he could push it away. How could it be accomplished overnight? This was already a great opportunity. Perhaps it could only be found in the Void Temple. Where else could it be found? Therefore, Han Fei didn't mind it at all. He immediately said, "Eldest senior brother, you're right. Suitability is the most important thing." Senior brother Azure Dragon said, "Little brother, you're right. No matter how powerful a cultivation technique is, it won't work if the person using it is not good enough. No matter how bad a cultivation technique is, it's still strong if the person using it is strong enough. After all, it still depends on the person." Seeing that Han Fei agreed, these two cultivation techniques were directly projected into Han Fei's head. They were Void Heaven Observation Art Unrated Introduction. The founding god of the Void Temple entered the Tao with his original appearance and left a mark to teach the future generations the Tao of the soul. The Void Heaven Observation Art is as powerful as the sky and can clearly understand the heavenly way. Integrate the soul and will into the sky and accept the tempering of the heavenly way in order to achieve the effect of soul refining. Deduction. Not deductible effect. Compete with the Tao between heaven and earth, understand the heavenly way, and temper the soul. Note: to practice this art, one must be extremely resistant to pressure. Technique of Void Mortal Refinement, Unranked, Introduction. The body refining art of the founding god of the Void Temple. It refines the body with the collapsing power of the endless void. During the refinement, one must constantly use and absorb the chaotic energy to polish the body and gradually replace the spiritual energy of the chaotic divine body. Deduction. Not deductible effect. The body is indestructible and the life is longer than the skynote. To practice this art, one must be careful not to enter the endless void by mistake. Although Han Fei hadn't tried it yet, from the description of these two arts, he could tell that these two arts didn't seem to be easy to practice. However, this effect, if understood literally, was obviously much stronger than the pure profound body. This was because the pure profound body still used spiritual energy, while the void physical refinement technique had already separated itself from spiritual energy. He wanted to create a body that only circulated primal chaos energy throughout his body. In fact, Han Fei didn't use much chaotic energy at the moment. In the Venerable Realm, chaotic energy was mostly used to open up the Sea of Origin. When he reached the Sea Expansion Realm, his Sea of Origin hadn't been fully opened, so he had to use chaotic energy to fill and strengthen his Sea of Origin. Therefore, even though Han Fei had a lot of chaotic energy now, plus the chaotic energy he just absorbed, he still hesitated to upgrade the time chain. Because the source of chaotic energy was either from killing kings or by chance. It would be too slow if he absorbed it slowly by himself. Once he overconsumed it now, The chaotic energy in his sea of origin wouldn't be able to keep up, which was not good for him to open the sky. However, what Han Fei still wanted was the 9th level of the void fishing art. The 9th level should be the last level of the void fishing art. Eldest senior brother once said that there was a void temple. As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, eldest senior brother said leisurely, "The time is not right. It's still too early. When you open the sky in the future, the last level of the art will be given to you." Han Fei cupped his hands. "Thank you, eldest senior brother." At this time, eldest senior brother said slowly, "Little junior brother, the initiation ceremony has been completed. If you need to leave, you can leave first. If you want to communicate with me, you can." After eldest senior brother said that, his magnificent figure slowly disappeared. Senior sister Kagura spread her wings and flew high. She chuckled and said, "Recently, there is a rumor among the divine beasts that the Emperor Sparrow has been born. You who are out on adventures, just be careful." Han Fei frowned. What did she mean? Had the outside world already known that the Emperor Sparrow had been born? But according to senior sister Kagura, it seemed that no one knew that the Emperor Sparrow was his spiritual beast. Otherwise, she wouldn't have reminded them. Senior brother Azure Dragon said, "I've heard about it too. But aren't the prehistoric beasts quite noisy? It seems that someone is going to compete with the Emperor Sparrow?" Senior sister Kagura said, "The Emperor Sparrow certainly doesn't dare to show up now, but when it grows up, it will be a bit ridiculous to compete with it. Okay, that's all I have to say. I'm leaving." Senior brother Undead said, "Recently, the Undying Temple has been taking action frequently and intends to start a war." Junior brother Six Gods, "It seems that the insect clan is involved, right?" Bug next to Han Fei said, "Yes. The insect clan has been fighting fiercely with the sea demons recently. 5 or 6 heaven-opening realm cultivators have died. The Undying Temple is indeed behind this. I'll take care of this matter." Gulp. Burp. Fifth senior brother drank a mouthful of wine. "If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. Little junior brother, don't listen to these messy things. Your top priority is to stabilize your cultivation, improve your strength, and strive to open the sky as soon as possible." Han Fei nodded. "Goodbye, fifth senior brother." Boom! A lightning mark appeared in the sky, and then a heavy voice sounded. It was senior brother Heavenly Thunder. He said, "Feng Yu, you've been too high profile recently. Senior martial brother, I heard that many people already bear grudges against you. You must be careful." Feng Yu said, "Thank you for reminding me, senior brother Heavenly Thunder. They're just a bunch of chickens and dogs. You don't have to worry about them." Soon, the senior brothers and sisters finished chatting and left this void one after another. Han Fei said goodbye to them one by one. He was speechless, but he seemed to have heard a lot of secrets. Damn it, the turmoil in the sea realm seems to be even greater than the chaotic ocean. How many heaven-opening realm cultivators have died in a war? Besides, that was the territory of 10,000 clans. Their discussion made Han Fei feel like 10,000 clans were fighting for hegemony. Shaking his head, Zhang Xian tossed aside these so-called miscellaneous information and left the Void Temple with a thought. He had gained a lot on this trip. However, although Han Fei also felt that this trip to the Imperial Palace was very dangerous, he always felt that the final test was actually not that difficult. When Han Fei walked out of the misty white light and took a closer look, there was no bronze gate. Instead, he was currently in a palace that was filled with an ancient and decaying aura. This palace was not so luxurious, but it contained a cold feeling. On the walls of this palace, there were colorful murals, which were very full, as if they were recording some kind of war. Han Fei saw one blurry figure after another, branded on the murals, each like a god. And directly opposite Han Fei, deep in the palace, there was a young man in a golden robe, who slowly turned his head. "Finally you're here." Chapter 2033. This scene was very strange. It was as if someone was waiting for him. He had already been to the Void Temple. Who was this person? Han Fei guessed. This person seemed to be alive. Could he be the one he was thinking of? Han Fei said, "Are you Chu Hao?" The young man smiled. "It's me." Han Fei was dumbfounded. "He's not dead?" Han Fei took a breath. "You're still alive?" If the person in front of him was Chu Hao, the owner of this imperial palace, how could he still be alive now? One should know that according to the jade slip left behind by Chu Hao, he was already seriously injured back then. Moreover, because he had cultivated for 6 lives, he no longer had the chance to cultivate another reincarnation, so he gave the demon purification gourd away as an opportunity. If Chu Hao was still alive, why would he give the devil purification gourd away? Wouldn't it be better to keep him around? How serious was the injury that the demon purification pot couldn't solve? Han Fei immediately calmed down. "You can't be alive." The man nodded slightly. "I'm not alive, but I'm not dead either." Narrowing his eyes, Han Fei waited for the young man to continue. He said, "In the longevity realm, it's not easy to live or die. If it's just my physical body, it's already gone. In the end, there is still a spirit, just like the old turtle in your body. You can call it a remnant soul." Han Fei became even more vigilant when he heard that it was a remnant soul of a venerable emperor. If it was hostile, he would have to use the seal of the Void Temple immediately. The young man smiled. "Don't be nervous. If I could possess you, I would have done so long ago. I wouldn't have waited tens of thousands of years for you to appear." Han Fei, however, was not convinced. "Not necessarily. What if it's just someone else who isn't worthy of your possession? A venerable emperor master is willing to wait more than 100,000 years for an opportunity, such as waiting for me to control the devil refining gourd. I don't think there's any problem with that. What do you think?" The young man laughed. "You're already a disciple of the Void Temple. Why would you be afraid of me?" "It's hard to say." The young man shook his head slightly and didn't seem to want to explain to Han Fei anymore. He said, "You should have read the jade slip I left. Don't think you're invincible just because you have the demon purification pot. Inheriting the demon purification pot meant that you had to shoulder greater responsibilities. In the past, there were many gods, and even with the demon refining gourd in hand, they were still unable to suppress the ominous. Instead, the gods fell, and their blood spilled over the darkness. Do you think Ben Jun really wants it?" Han Fei had made up his mind. No matter what the man said, he didn't believe that he would give up the demon purification pot. What bullsh** T about the fall of the gods? How could that scare him? A super expert who could become a venerable sovereign must have a strong heart and a great talent. When danger and the demon purification pot were placed in front of them at the same time, they would probably choose the demon purification pot. Perhaps the ominous might kill you, but the demon purification pot might make you a god. Before knowing Chu Hao's real intention, Han Fei would never let his guard down. Seeing that Han Fei was unusually vigilant, Chu Hao naturally did not deliberately explain. He said, "The reason why I gave the demon purification gourd away was because of the demon purification gourd. There are 2 main reasons. One is that I'm indeed almost dead, and can no longer use this thing. The gods gave it to me, and I will choose a successor to teach it to. The one who controls the demon purification pot, whether you like it or not, will eventually bear the responsibility of facing the ominous, which you can't escape from. Secondly, this monarch's current state can't be considered as a complete divine soul. My injuries can still be healed, but I lack a spiritual treasure. I hope you can find it. For this, I can provide you with information about the other vines in the demon purification pot. Actually, if you can get what I need, I might not be your match at that time. Think about it yourself, what do you think?" Han Fei thought, "That's reasonable. This man was quite badly injured. That should be right." As he said, if he just wanted to help him find some treasure, it didn't seem difficult to restore his soul and rebuild his body. At that time, he would still be a venerable sovereign. Although he was not a god, he would still be extremely powerful. Just like what Chu Hao had said, if he could get his hands on that thing, he would be able to save Chu Hao, who was so badly injured. That thing was probably not something that ordinary people could get their hands on. If he could get it, his strength would definitely be at the Pioneer Sea realm. Besides, even if he got that treasure, he could come back and give it to him when he was strong enough. Therefore, Han Fei immediately accepted this explanation. He asked, "What ultimate treasure?" Chu Hao said lightly, "The Heavenly Clan, the Holy Spirit Spring, at least 100 caddies." "The Heavenly Clan?" Chu Hao said, "The vast Sea Clan. As you become stronger and stronger, you will eventually know it. But I remind you that ordinary Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators don't go to the Heavenly Clan, because they can't get it even if they go there." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "Do you mean that I will go there after I become an immortal?" Chu Hao said, "That's not necessarily impossible, as long as the Sea Realm can still hold on until then." Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, "What do you mean?" Chu Hao said leisurely, "In the depths of chaos, darkness comes and ominous things invade. Although it has been suppressed many times, how long can this place stop it? Maybe 100,000 years, maybe 1,000,000 years, but the darkness will come eventually." Han Fei frowned slightly. Whatever. Anyway, he wouldn't care about these things when he was powerless. He said, "Where are the other small vines of the demon purification pot?" Chu Hao said, "There were many people who hunted me. But as I guessed, those who can get the small vines must have one. The Heavenly Clan must have one, the Savage Beast Clan must have one, and I'm not sure about the last one, because there were too many venerable emperors who hunted me." Han Fei asked, "Did the 3 divine temples participate?" Chu Hao shook his head. "No. With the strength of the 3 divine temples, they don't necessarily need the demon purification pot." Han Fei asked again, "Does the Void Temple know that the demon purification pot is with me?" Chu Hao continued to shake his head. "I don't know. The Void Temple may be very strong, but they are not powerful enough to monitor the world. When human beings came out of this place, I sensed the shadow of the Void Temple and built the Imperial Palace here. In the name of inheritance, they built the Imperial Palace and the Void Temple's double secret realms. They may know, but they won't pay attention to me." Han Fei believed Chu Hao's words. Looking at the personalities of the Void Temple's senior brothers and sisters, they were all very busy. Whether they were strong or not didn't matter for now. For example, the Deathless Temple controlled the war between the Zerg clan and the Sea Demons. 5 or 6 heaven-opening stage cultivators were killed, but Senior Brother Six Gods casually said that he would deal with it. It was not an exaggeration to say that these people were low-key and arrogant. A venerable emperor who was almost dead shouldn't be a problem in their eyes. Otherwise, if their eldest senior brother casually stretched out his hand, this guy wouldn't be able to resist him. Han Fei said, "Okay. That's a deal. Heavenly Clan, Holy Spirit Spring Water. I will find it for you, but I don't know when." Han Fei guessed that Chu Hao might not know where the last small vine was. Otherwise, who would save him if he told him everything? And Chu Hao obviously knew that Han Fei had the nautical globe. Since he told Han Fei so frankly, he must be sure that the nautical globe couldn't find the small vine at all. Those who could become venerable emperors were certainly not ordinary people. In essence, Han Fei and Chu Hao's fate should be similar. Chu Hao got the demon purification pot, so he was hunted by the 9th heaven and 10th hell and ended up in this situation. Han Fei had tasted the feeling of being hunted as early as when he fought for the sea-quelling painting and got the sea token. A group of strong masters chased you and didn't even give you a chance to breathe. It might not be a bad thing to form a bond with Chu Hao because of this. Seeing that Han Fei agreed, Chu Hao said with a smile, "That's a deal. You've got a lot of opportunities in the Imperial Palace. You've also successfully entered the Void Temple. There should be nothing else you need here, right?" Yes. Han Fei thought to himself, what do you mean? Do you want to get rid of me so easily? There are so many treasures on the tree, but you don't want to give me any of them? Isn't this a bit too much? I've just reached the sea opening stage, and the Origin Sea needs a lot of resources. There are so many treasures in the Imperial Palace. Are you going to keep them for yourself? Chu Hao. Standing in front of the mural, Chu Hao said leisurely, it's true that I'm waiting for you, and it's true that I'm looking for a successor. Why don't you be my successor? If you want, I can give you all of them. Han Fei said, that's impossible. I'm already a member of the Void Temple. However, if you are willing to teach me, I can also help you develop it. Chu Hao said, if you learn my way, you are very likely to be recognized. In the Sea Realm, it will only cause you trouble. Han Fei said, how about this? I just need some basic resources. For example, the mystic yellow soil, the ultra-quality spiritual stones, the mystic crystals in the mineral veins, the spiritual spring, the spiritual heritage, the herb garden. Han Fei counted the resources that could be added to the Origin Sea with his fingers, without any nervousness or fear of facing an imperial emperor. Because Han Fei knew that this person was not a threat to him. Once he was, this person would die. Eldest senior brother's hand was no joke. Hearing Han Fei listing the names as if he were counting his family treasures, Chu Hao was speechless. Why don't you let me fill up your Origin Sea? Han Fei asked, can I? Chu Hao. Seeing that Chu Hao didn't speak, Han Fei said again, look at this place, it's a remote place. The resources here are definitely not as abundant as in the Sea Realm. Prepare some resources for me. Helping me is also helping you. In the end, Chu Hao compromised. One person can get 3 spiritual treasures on the tree. I'll give you 10. Don't be greedy. Many things are useless to you. Han Fei didn't care and said, I have a few brothers and friends. The safety of these people. Chapter 2034. When he asked a venerable emperor how many resources he had, Han Fei asked for 4 pieces of black-yellow soil, 100 medicine garden, more than 300 spiritual veins, more than 500 mineral veins, 50 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones, and a spiritual spring. Most importantly, Han Fei asked for 100,000 ownerless souls, which were basically free meat pies. Chu Hao said, the chaotic ocean sea has been demanding for more than 100,000 years, and I've consumed a lot of resources. Now I only have less than 50% left. If I want to rebuild my true body, I need an astronomical figure. Before Chu Hao finished, Han Fei said, don't brag. What I want is nothing more than a drizzle to the Imperial Emperor. I know how much I need at the moment. To be honest, the resources I want are only enough for me to expand an 80,000-kilometer Origin Sea. If I didn't want to take resources from others for free, I would have asked for twice as much from you. Chu Hao said, you're quite self-aware. Han Fei asked, by the way, the Origin Sea of those people I killed belongs to me, right? Chu Hao nodded. Of course. Han Fei asked, is that hand of yours chasing me? Chu Hao said, I changed it to another place. I chased you to force you into the Eternal Thunder Prison. Han Fei thought to himself, thank you so much. One day later, Han Fei, who had reached an agreement with Chu Hao, successfully plundered the Origin Sea of 9 people. He gained as many as 11 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones, plus various other resources, which could help him expand an area of less than 90,000 kilometers of the Origin Sea. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. He really didn't know how long it would take for a king like him to collect all the resources he needed without his luck. After following Chu Hao through the back door and protecting Xia Shaochan and the others, Han Fei entered his Origin Sea unscrupulously. Because at this moment, the Imperial Palace no longer restricted him. In the Origin Sea, the first thing Han Fei did was to crazily consume resources to expand the Origin Sea. Now, Han Fei's Origin Sea had reached 60,000 kilometers, only a little bit away. He wanted to expand the origin sea to 100,000 kilometers in one fell swoop. In order to make up for the previous consumption, it only took Han Fei 3 days to consume nearly 30% of the countless resources he had obtained. Why did he consume 30%? Because his source sea had already been replenished with a lot of resources. Later, from the source sea of his senior brothers and senior sisters, Chu Hao and the fallen king, he obtained about 80 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones in total. 30% was 24 billion origin stones, just enough to complete his current origin sea. Senior brother Undead had given him 10,000 strands of chaotic chi, and he had obtained more than 33,800 strands of chaotic chi from the fallen monarchs. In total, he had a staggering 116,196 strands of chaotic chi. This meant that the amount of chaotic chi he had stored had almost doubled. With so much chaotic chi, Han Fei knew that it was time for him to be extravagant. Therefore, he waved his hand, and 10,000 streams of chaotic energy were absorbed into the demon purification pot. The time chain began to level up. The difficulty of advancing this time was obviously much higher than the previous time. It took him an entire day and night to barely complete the advancement. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, the effect of the 64 times time acceleration made him fall into ecstasy. He once heard that one day in heaven was equivalent to 1 year in the human world. Although his source sea had not reached such an exaggerated level, it was already amazing. 1 year in the outside world was equivalent to 60 years in the source sea. How abnormal! No wonder the Temple of Time could be listed as one of the 3 divine temples. He didn't know if the 3 divine temples had such a terrifying time acceleration. If they did, he didn't know how many strong masters would be born there. Of course, for Han Fei's current situation, time alone was not enough. He had to have enough resources for his cultivation. How many resources would he have to consume in the past 100 years? 3 years later. It had been 3 years since the Imperial Palace was opened. According to Han Fei's understanding, there were dozens of dangerous places in the underground palace. In the past 3 years, countless strong masters had died. On this day, in a maze with towering walls that could even be combined, 2 figures, fighting fiercely, escaped in the maze. The girl in front vomited blood while running. All of a sudden, a purple shield of light appeared behind the young girl. Bam! The moment the purple light shield appeared, a triangular spiral appeared between the eyebrows of the strong master chasing after her, which rotated and crushed the purple light shield into pieces. Puff! A fleshy claw flew into the sky, was pinched by a big hand, and was instantly crushed. On the girl's shoulder there was a starfish with only 2 claws left, who was basically in a coma at this moment. These 2 people were none other than Xia Shaochan and the hexagon starfish. Xia Shaochan shouted, "Big starfish, hold on. Don't attack anymore." The hexagon starfish said in a sobbing tone, "I can't attack anymore. If I attack again, I'll be finished." Behind the 2 of them, the black-clothed king snorted coldly. "Xia Shaochan, after hiding in the maze with me for 3 years, I finally meet you again. This time, you can no longer escape from me." Cicada, what responded to this black-clothed man was the cry of a silkworm. The blades of light and shadow all over the sky intertwined and rushed at the man. Every slash had the strength of someone who had just entered the sea expansion realm, but none of them could break the black-clothed man's defense. Xia Shaochan, on the other hand, moved at an incredible speed, as fast as light and shadow jumping in a zigzag mirror. Burst speed, divine walk. The triangle between the black-clothed man's eyebrows flickered more and more, and his speed also reached the fastest. He chased after Xia Shaochan and the shadow of the heavenly cicada, not much slower. Xia Shaochan couldn't help but bleed from her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. She couldn't resist, and her speed was getting slower and slower. The middle-aged man said, Last time, it took you 5 full-strength blows from Han Fei to escape. I'd like to see how many full-strength blows Han Fei gave you. I can't let you escape from me. Puff. Bam! Xia Shaochan slammed into the wall of the maze. It was not that she was not strong enough, but that this person from Investiture Heaven was too strong. Although before coming, Han Fei had considered that people from Investiture Heaven might attack the Imperial Palace. So he gave Xia Shaochan 5 full-strength blows at once. However, this person's strength was completely beyond Xia Shaochan and Han Fei's expectations. This person could be said to have almost reached the limit of the Pioneer Sea realm. Especially after he performed the so-called God's Arrival, after the battle broke out, he could even resist Han Fei's full-strength blow. It seemed that the only purpose of the Investiture Heaven's existence was to kill Xia Shaochan. At this moment, the void was blocked, and the voice from the black-clothed man seemed to be specially designed to restrain Xia Shaochan. The black-clothed man shouted, "In the end, you still have to die." Therefore, the moment Xia Shaochan was injured, this person launched a fatal attack, in case anything unexpected happened. A silver chain was about to smash Xia Shaochan. When the hexagon starfish was about to release the last hexagon shield, a phantom appeared in front of Xia Shaochan. This phantom was not Han Fei, but a woman in armor holding a golden trident. Who else could it be but Xia Hongzhu, Xia Shaochan's mother? Bam! The silver chain was knocked to the ground, and Xia Hongzhu snorted coldly. The infamily is really despicable. How dare you use the soul-destroying sound to deal with your own daughter? Damn it! The black-clothed man who was knocked back looked horrified, but then he smiled and said, "It turns out that the War Queen has really been resurrected. Unfortunately, it's just a projection. What can it do to me?" A triangular divine seal appeared behind the black-clothed man, and his strength soared crazily. He even crushed 3 jade slips in his hand, and 3 figures of Huang Jingyuan of the Investiture Heaven appeared in a row. The black-clothed man said, "I know you've been resurrected, and I've been waiting for this moment. Today, let's see if you can break through these 3 projections of the Emperor and stop me." The 3 figures of Huang Jingyuan, after sensing the situation, suddenly took action. The 3 of them launched a joint attack, and 3 triangular divine seals appeared, saying in unison, "3 elements God sealing seal, seal." Xia Hongzhu frowned. The 3 of them couldn't stop her, but they could trap her for a while. But it could trap her for a while, and that was exactly what Xia Shaochan needed. Xia Hongzhu said, "Shaochan, can you hold on for 3 seconds?" Xia Shaochan gritted her teeth. She had just entered the Pioneer Sea realm. How could she hold on when faced with a king who was almost at the peak of the Pioneer Sea realm? If she still had a full-strength strike, she might be able to hold on, but the point was that she had used all of them last time. Xia Shaochan took out a 5th-grade Dao pattern pill and a high-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure, trying to hold on. "Humph! Although they are good, you're too weak. Kill." Taking advantage of the moment when Xia Hongzhu was trapped, the black-clothed man burst out with countless sword currents from his body. His strength had reached the heaven-opening realm. Xia Hongzhu rose up and gathered all her strength to attack the God-sealing seal. Unfortunately, Xia Hongzhu was just a soul after all, and he hadn't recovered from his injuries. With a series of ka-ka-ka sounds, 2 of Huang Jingyuan's 3 great projections were destroyed, but there was still one that was still standing strong. At this time, Xia Hongzhu had no time to launch a second attack. The 6 big eyes of the hexagon starfish rolled crazily and muttered, "It's over, it's over, it's over, it's over. I'm going to die." Xia Shaochan didn't give up. Holding the big black umbrella in front of her, she shouted, "Even if I die, Han Fei will slaughter the infamily. Let's see how long you can be complacent. Bem?" Rumble. Just when Xia Shaochan thought that she couldn't hold on anymore, a gentle voice suddenly sounded in her ears. It was so familiar and gave her a sense of security. "Sorry, I'm late. God's Investiture Heaven, prepare to be destroyed. Xia Hongzhu looked sideways, only to see immortal spiritual energy and ferocious energy intertwined, and a beam of light burst out at an extreme speed. The black-clothed man didn't block the immortal killing intent or the ultimate blade. He exclaimed, "How did you find this place so quickly?" But his eyes blurred, and one of his feet was picked up by Han Fei. Bam! 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 This person was crushed by Han Fei and smashed into a pulp in the blink of an eye. Han Fei said indifferently, "Because I went through the back door." Chapter 2035. Even Huang Jingyuan didn't expect Han Fei to be so strong. In his opinion, Anming was a hidden trump card of the investiture heaven. He was a member of the An family who came to the investiture heaven through the god's arrival technique. His strength had reached the peak of the sea expansion realm, and his pure power had reached 350,000 wave. When he activated the god's arrival technique, his strength was doubled. With the ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure, it would be difficult for even a heaven-opening realm cultivator to take him down. But to Huang Jingyuan's and Xia Hongzhu's surprise, Han Fei smashed Anming's full-strength blow with one hand, and with a backhand move, he instantly injured Anming with a terrifying power that could only be unleashed by a heaven-opening realm cultivator. Then, Anming was captured by Han Fei before he even had a chance to resist. Xia Hongzhu had only seen Han Fei's incarnation. At that time, Han Fei's bragging was a bit exaggerated in her eyes. She just wanted to verify Han Fei's character through time. But at this moment, Xia Hongzhu remembered that Han Fei said that he was invincible in every realm. This might be true. At this moment, Xia Xiaochan laughed so hard that her eyes turned red and she almost couldn't hold back her tears. Sure enough, at the critical moment, her man was the most reliable. The hexagon starfish laughed even more when he saw Han Fei. "Ha ha ha, Han Fei is here. I don't have to die. Han Fei, help." Starfish was dying, and his claws were almost broken. "Give me the God's Awakening technique." This time, Han Fei didn't attack the hexagon starfish. This guy looked quite miserable, with only two claws clinging to Xia Xiaochan's shoulder. When the healing divine light descended, Xia Xiaochan and the hexagon starfish couldn't help but stretch their bodies at the same time. The hexagon starfish's tentacles were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Xia Xiaochan was only injured by the soul-destroying sound. Her soul was slightly injured, but her internal injuries didn't affect her too much. Even so, a 7th-grade soul-suppressing pill flew to Xia Xiaochan. This was Han Fei's last 7th-grade soul-suppressing pill. If he wanted more, he would have to go to the Medicine King Heaven or fish in the time tunnel. At this moment, Han Fei pinched Anming with one hand and looked at Xia Hongzhu. At this moment, Xia Hongzhu happened to break Huang Jingyuan's full-strength blow with one halberd. From now on, Xia Xiaochan was safe. Xia Hongzhu only took a glance at Han Fei, and the phantom retreated into Xia Xiaochan's body. Unlike Huang Jingyuan and the others, Xia Hongzhu left a soul mark on Xia Xiaochan to protect her secretly. Han Fei came to Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan in one step, slightly relieved, and then asked, "Where's my full-strength strike?" Just when Xia Xiaochan felt that the healing effect was stabilizing, she saw that Han Fei was already close to her. She pouted slightly and said, "I used it. This man is too strong." Han Fei frowned slightly. He crushed this person, broke his body, and captured his soul. Xia Xiaochan's eyes turned cold. "This person is from the An family. I don't know how he came to the God's Bane heaven. Because of this person's pursuit, I had no choice but to play hide-and-seek with him in this maze for the past few years. I didn't even get many fortuitous opportunities." Han Fei was speechless. "Just be content. This is a powerhouse who has reached the peak of the sea expansion realm. It's already good enough to survive his attack. What fortuitous encounter." Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little scared. Fortunately, Xia Xiaochan was fast and had a lot of skills, so she managed to dodge. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Just now, Chu Hao informed him and opened a back door for him. Otherwise, he might not have been able to make it here in time. Han Fei couldn't help but be annoyed. The Godsbane Heaven and the Infamily might not know that they were already on Han Fei's death list, even higher than the Grand Pure Wuji, the 100 Demons, and the Undersea Humans. Han Fei said, "Unfamily, I'd like to see what's so arrogant about the Infamily." Han Fei directly used the soul-searching technique to search this person's memory. However, as soon as Han Fei's consciousness arrived, before he had time to search this person's memory, he heard a cold snort, which seemed to come from the endless void. Pooh! Han Fei suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood, and his eyes, nose, and mouth were bleeding. He was forcibly shaken out of the man in black's memory. Xia Xiaochan's face changed greatly. "Are you okay?" Cough, cough. Han Fei wiped the corner of his mouth, opened his mouth, and swallowed the essence blood. He shook his head slightly. "I'm fine. This person's memory and sea of consciousness may have been tampered with by an immortal level powerhouse." Xia Xiaochan couldn't help exclaiming, "Immortal level? An emperor?" Han Fei nodded slightly. Thinking of his eldest senior brother's means, and judging from the voice just now, it shouldn't be the voice of this man in black. If this voice wasn't imprinted in advance, the person who spoke might still be in a very distant place. Then, it could only be an emperor who spoke. At this time, the soul of the man in Han Fei's hand was melting, as if it was corroded by some kind of power, and he began to die. Han Fei couldn't help but narrow his eyes. "Girl, we can take our time to avenge the Infamily. And the investiture of God's heaven can be eliminated first." "Okay." In a palace far away in the outer domain, on a throne, a middle-aged man snorted coldly, and his eyes seemed to see through the void, looking at an extremely distant place. "Xia Hongzhu, I look forward to the day when you return." On this side, the hexagon starfish's claws had just grown, and it clawed from Xia Xiaochan to Han Fei. In the past, the hexagon starfish liked to stay on Xia Xiaochan's shoulder, because although Xia Xiaochan was fierce, she wouldn't really hit it. But Han Fei would. This guy was simply inhuman when he hit the starfish. However, this place was too dangerous. As long as they didn't leave the Imperial Palace, it didn't want to be separated from Han Fei. Xia Xiaochan sighed. "Do I still have time to look for opportunities now?" Han Fei shook his head. "Maybe, forget it. Although there are many opportunities in the Imperial Palace, it doesn't mean that there are fewer opportunities outside. The investiture of God's heaven, the Grand Purity Palace, the Wuji Heaven, the 100 Demons clan, the Seabed Human clan, they are all waiting for us to settle accounts, and a huge amount of resources are waiting for us. At least for your current realm, you can get far more benefits from this place than from this place." Xia Xiaochan stamped her feet. "But I've spent all my time here. So far I haven't found anything good in this damn maze." Suddenly, Xia Xiaochan looked at the bottom of her feet. It seemed that a mechanism had been triggered, and the maze here began to change. The walls of the maze, which were like rock walls, were intertwined. Immediately, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan found a bronze statue stuck in the rock wall. In the hand of this statue there was a piece of yellow soil. Han Fei's eyes widened. Black yellow soil? Is Chu Hao's compensation so casual? Han Fei looked at the void and thought to himself, Chu Hao is really stingy. I asked you to take care of my people, especially Xia Xiaochan, but this is how you take care of her? Just give her a piece of black-yellow soil in the end. Xia Xiaochan was dumbfounded. She had wandered in this maze for 3 years without finding anything, but Han Fei just came here and stomped his foot, and there was a treasure. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help looking at Han Fei suspiciously. Did you put this here? Han Fei shrugged. I certainly didn't do it. You see, I just found you. Xia Xiaochan was skeptical. Then what is this? A stone. It looks like a piece of soil. Han Fei couldn't help but explain to Xia Xiaochan, This is called black yellow soil, a treasure used to consolidate and strengthen the origin sea. This piece was extremely hard to find in the entire chaotic azure sea. Such a large piece, not to brag, can at least improve the strength of the origin sea by a level. Xia Shaochan immediately glared at him. You still say it's not yours? No wonder I haven't found a treasure in 3 years. Why did it come out so easily? So you have a lot of treasures. Are you trying to show me? Han Fei was speechless. You've wronged a good person this time. This thing really wasn't put here by us. Otherwise, why didn't I just give it to you? What's mine and what's yours, isn't it the same? Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Chu Hao's treasure is too low. How the F***ck can I explain it to him? Could it be that I'm already familiar with the emperor here? Finally, Xia Shaochan still picked up the black-yellow soil. Fine, it's your gift. I'm just comforting myself. It's not easy to come to the imperial palace. I can't risk my life and get no treasures. How shameful it will be. Xia Shaochan asked, How long until we go out? Han Fei replied, Only 3 days left. 3 days later. Outside the imperial palace, in the 36 black heavens, only half of the big ships of the families were still there, or several families shared a ship and stayed here. The reason was that almost all the people who went in were dead. What were they waiting here for? Waiting for others to come out and show off their treasures? Of course, some people had ulterior motives. They left early in the morning just to prepare for hunting, including many kings. Swish! When a figure appeared from the mist, the various forces immediately perked up. Some people fell, and naturally some people rose. In the first half, everyone died in the imperial palace, and the second half was now. Chapter 2036. Outside the imperial palace, when the first person appeared, it meant that everyone had already come out. No wonder the people waiting outside were excited. Swish! Han Fei and Xia Shaochan appeared at the edge of the sea area of the imperial palace at the same time. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder. Didn't they say that the location was random? Why did Xia Shaochan and I appear together? Could it be that the people who were together in the imperial palace were also together when they were sent out of the imperial palace? Hoo! The sea breeze whistled, and the surrounding mist began to dissipate, which would shrink back to a smaller area. In a short time, this place would become a dangerous place and even fade out of the sight of people in the chaotic ocean. Ordinary people might not be able to find it at all. Xia Shaochan couldn't help but be surprised. Why are we together? Han Fei shook his head. I don't know, but it saves me a lot of trouble. Let's go find the 3 of them first. For Han Fei, this trip to the imperial palace was a huge harvest, but in fact it was mainly because of the demon purification pot, which had a lot to do with the secrets behind the imperial palace. If he didn't have the demon purification pot, he might be lost in various dangerous places like most people on this trip. Because Chu Hao would never give you a chance to get in touch with the core of the imperial palace unless you got the demon purification pot. For example, Chu Hao once showed him that Bai Yu of the martial emperor city was indeed the first person to leave the bronze tree. However, he was stuck on a river of white bones and had been spinning in it, unable to move forward. And he was seen through by Chu Hao. And he intended to uproot the entire bronze tree, so he was directly sent to the test checkpoint of the Void Temple by Chu Hao. Even a character like Bai Yu could only wander in the dangerous places of the imperial palace. Luo Xiaobai and the others, even with his help, would not be any better. Of course, there should be a lot of experience. Han Fei held the nautical panorama in his hand and quickly turned it. Because the scope of this sea area was not very large, only about a radius of 3 million kilometers, it was very fast to find people. Especially when Han Fei had the nautical panorama. As soon as Luo Xiaobai appeared on the sea, she looked around and directly held a jade slip in her hand. It was a communication slip, and she was about to take the initiative to contact Han Fei. Swish, however, before Luo Xiaobai started to look for them, she saw a golden flash in front of her, and Han Fei and Xia Shaochan appeared in front of her. Luo Xiaobai, you guys so fast? Let's find someone first. The mist is shrinking and the heaven-opening state may attack at any time. Luo Xiaobai nodded. But this time, Han Fei didn't even use the navigator. Within 1,000,000 kilometers, he saw that Lu Renquang was fighting the 3 sea demons. After fusing with the deep blue roar, Lu Renquang looked like a monster in the sea. He was more than 20 meters tall, with arms like claws and a weird turtle shell on his back. The sea demons that had survived to this point were certainly not weak, so Lu Renquang failed to kill them. But he only heard him cursing, "Bastards, don't run if you have the ability. My brother will be here soon." However, a shark on the opposite side was blowing a conch. "Humph, let's see if your brothers or the 100 demons arrive first." In the Dharch Palace, they could still compete with their strength. But as soon as they went outside, they would compete with their background. Just as the shark shouted, a golden light flashed, and Han Fei, Luo Xiaobai, and Xia Shaochan had arrived. Lu Renquang didn't expect Han Fei to come so quickly. Seeing that Han Fei had found Xia Shaochan and Luo Xiaobai, he couldn't help but laugh. "See? My brothers are here. Where are your family's strong masters?" The 3 of them changed their faces drastically, and a conch shouted, "Oh no, it's Han Fei." At that moment, Han Fei slapped down. The 3 of them didn't even have a chance to run. Their bodies couldn't even move, and they were slapped to death by Han Fei. Han Fei casually threw 7 or 8 sun moon shells to Lu Renquang. Han Fei said, "Return to your original body. Don't waste time. Let's find Zhang Xuanyu." Han Fei knew that in less than 2 minutes, the 100 demon clan's strong masters would arrive. Even if they were not Sherpa Huang who was in the heaven-opening state, they would at least be in the Pioneer Sea state. Although Han Fei was no longer afraid of any Pioneer Sea state cultivators, it would still take him a little time to kill one. And the moment they came out of the Imperial Palace was the moment when they were most likely to die. He had to find Zhang Xuanyu first and then deal with other things. As soon as Lu Renquang returned to his original body, before he had time to speak, he was enveloped by Han Fei's power and disappeared. After the few of them disappeared, a giant octopus appeared in the blink of an eye. This octopus grabbed a few soul fragments from the void, and its eyes were cold. "Who is it? Why did you attack the 100 demon clan so soon?" On the other side, Zhang Xuanyu, Jian Hui, and Mushui Sisi somehow got together. And not only the 3 of them, but there were also 2 mermaids from the royal family with them. One of them was an acquaintance. It was Bai Muling who was chasing Xia Shaochan. At this moment, the 5 of them surrounded the 3 seafloor humans. Zhang Xuanyu said, "I've found that the opportunities in the Imperial Palace are really hard to get. If you want to get resources quickly, you have to rely on hunting. Let's make it clear that the resources on the 3 of them will belong to the king who comes first." But soon after, the few of them felt a terrifying pressure descend upon them. Jian Hui's face darkened. "It's a king." It turned out that before they saw who was coming, the other party's attack had already arrived. It was a stone dragon as big as a mountain, rushing straight here. Mushui Sisi said, "Not good, it's Pang Jia of the 100 Demon Clan. This is the Great Stone Dragon technique. Run." Zhang Xuanyu said, "Don't panic. Let's hold him together. Jian Hui, block him." Jian Hui looked sideways. "How can I block him?" Although they said so, how could they escape the attack of a Pioneer Sea State powerhouse? Jian Hui spat out a small white sword from his mouth, and the pure sword intent that had been accumulated for a long time burst out. Pang Jia was also surprised. He was lucky to survive this time because Han Fei had disappeared. He was more willing to believe that Han Fei had died in the Imperial Palace. Originally, after coming out, Pang Jia planned to find his own camp as soon as possible. Because he had obtained 3 rare treasures, he felt that he might have a chance to open the sky, so he had to protect himself. However, after coming out, he sensed and immediately saw Jian Hui, Mushui Sisi, Zhang Xuanyu, and Bai Muling. He knew the identity of each of these people, although they were only half-king realm cultivators. But any one of them had the possibility of opening the sky. For example, Jian Hui, he felt that he was the most likely one to open the sky. Anyway, it would be easy to kill these people, so he had to hurry up and kill them before the Pioneer Sea State arrived on the battlefield. It wouldn't delay things, and in terms of long-term benefits, it would be beneficial to the 100 Demon Clan. Facing Jian Hui's sword, Pang Jia snorted coldly. "You're just a half-king. Do you really think you can compare to a king with a sword?" Pang Jia stretched out his hand and easily grabbed the sword with just his physical body. Bam! In a flash, the sword shattered. It couldn't even hurt Pang Jia's palm, and the latter flipped his hand and shook the sea with a turtle shell. Jian Hui and the other four all vomited blood. Zhang Xuanyu roared. He was fine in the imperial palace, but he died outside. He couldn't accept this. This time, the opportunity was quite abundant. He felt that he could try to transcend the tribulation and become a king when he went back. How could he die here? Zhang Xuanyu crushed a jade slip with a flip of his hand. Hey! So what if you're a king? If you can't kill me today, I will open the sky tomorrow and chase after you every day. Mushui Sisi also threw out a talisman and a bronze bell, which transformed in the air, trying to buy time for them. However, the jade slip that Zhang Xuanyu threw out was not a full-strength blow. Instead, it was a treasure called 1,000 Lightning Flash, which was obtained in the imperial palace. Boom, boom, boom! In an instant, thousands of lightning bolts flashed across the sky. Zhang Xuanyu thought that he could at least block this king for a few seconds, but the other party was completely unharmed and still galloped in the lightning. Mushui Sisi's bronze bell was crushed by Pang Jia's fist. Puff, puff, puff! The five of them vomited blood again, and their bodies were covered with cracks. But how long had it been? It had only been less than 5 seconds since they came out. Although they had used various means to delay him for a few seconds, it was still not enough. Bai Muling roared, turned into a little white dragon, spat out a milky white bead, and shouted, "Pang Jia, how dare you attack me? Aren't you afraid that my father will kill you?" Pang Jia thought quickly and then snorted coldly. "Humph! I'm about to open the sky. Why would the mermaid royal family fight against me for you?" The bead burst out with a strange light and tried to resist, but Pang Jia slapped it with a backhand, and Bai Muling's body exploded. This was the result of a half-king fighting a real king. Even if he used all his trump cards, he was no match for Pang Jia at all. A bloody light flashed in Pang Jia's eyes, and he slapped down. In the blink of an eye, these so-called heavenly talents wouldn't even have a place to run. And at this moment, Zhang Xuanyu silently took out a big shield, thinking to himself, "Let's see if I can survive this mid-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure." Bam! The wind was howling and the waves were crashing. Zhang Xuanyu and the others seemed to be swaying in the waves, feeling that they were unlucky and were about to die. But then they found that something was wrong. It didn't hurt. It seemed that no attack fell. When they took a closer look, they saw that Han Fei had appeared out of nowhere and punched out a beam of light, smashing one of Pang Jia's arms into pieces. At this moment, they heard Han Fei's leisurely voice. "You. Surprised?" Chapter 2037. Cough, cough. Zhang Xuanyu was so annoyed by Han Fei's teasing look that he coughed up a mouthful of blood. He was speechless. "You're already here. Why don't you attack?" Han Fei shrugged. "Of course not. I've just arrived." Han Fei's appearance made Pang Jia's face change drastically. He didn't want to fight Han Fei. A sea expansion realm cultivator wanted to kill him. Before Han Fei was born, Pang Jia would only be full of disdain. In terms of defense, he could withstand the attack of a heaven-opening realm cultivator, and he could rank in the top 10 of the sea expansion list. With this strength, Pang Jia wouldn't even be able to escape if the heaven-opening realm didn't come out. However, Han Fei's terrifying means terrified Pang Jia. In terms of strength, he surpassed him. In terms of physique, he surpassed him. In terms of speed, he surpassed him. In terms of soul, he also seemed to surpass him. In terms of defense, if he didn't have this shell, he would be defeated. Even with this shell, he didn't dare to underestimate Han Fei. After all, his shell couldn't resist all kinds of attack. Besides, Han Fei was evil. He was really unlucky to meet this guy. As soon as he left the Imperial Palace, Pang Jia immediately retreated. A few trifling demi-monarchs were just a matter of convenience to him. In fact, it didn't matter whether he could kill them or not. There was no need to fight with Han Fei now. However, Han Fei's voice echoed between heaven and earth. "You hurt my brother. Do you think you can just leave?" Swish! A golden light flashed, and Han Fei had already stood in front of Pang Jia. With a thought from Han Fei, the ultimate blade had already been smashed out. Clang, clang, clang. Although the ultimate blade couldn't break Pang Jia's defense, it didn't mean that he was completely unaffected. In order to block the ultimate blade, which was a low-quality divine weapon, Pang Jia had to resist it with his strongest state. Now, Pang Jia had transformed into a human form and his back armor was limited, so he could only condense a void shield. Although it could also block the ultimate blade, it meant that he would have to give up his chance to escape. However, Pang Jia still chose to do so because he knew that with the heaven-opening realm cultivators of the 100 Demons clan here, it would be meaningless no matter how strong Han Fei was. Hum, hum, hum. Every time the ultimate blade attacked, it would form a ripple that spread to the surroundings. Zhang Xuanyu had just returned, and his expression was one of shock. Did Fei Fei make a move? How did he do it? When everyone was looking at the battlefield, Luo Xiaobai said, "I'm afraid we can't go on like this. All the great heaven-opening realm experts should be nearby. If we drag this on, it won't be good for us." Han Fei seemed to know that time was running out. If the limit blade was not enough, he could toss it out at any time. The endless water turned into a blade, and the area within 50 kilometers of Pang Jia was completely covered by the blade. Since even the ultimate blade couldn't break Pang Jia's defense, the infinity water naturally couldn't either. However, these two could deal a lot of damage. If it went on like this, Han Fei was almost certain that Pang Jia wouldn't be able to hold on for more than 10 minutes without an external source of power. But now, Han Fei didn't have 100 seconds. Even if he had 100 breaths of time. He had already sensed that there were figures passing by in the surrounding space. The various heaven-opening experts should have already noticed the situation over here, and they would arrive in a breath's time at most. And 2 of them had already arrived. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and his strength rose rapidly. Under the operation of the Great Tao, the terrifying pressure was close to that of a heaven-opening realm expert. Heaven and Earth Law. A giant more than 500 meters tall appeared out of thin air. In the center of the giant's chest, Han Fei's body was shining with golden light. Gradually, this Dharma idol also became golden. In the past 3 years, Han Fei had obtained so many resources. The Origin Sea had been developed, and he had even laid out more than 80,000 kilometers. His pure power had reached the threshold of 400,000 wave. Under the operation of the Great Tao, his power reached 1.2 million waves, and when he used the Heaven and Earth Law, his strength increased by another 30%. In terms of pure power, Han Fei might have the power of 1.56 million waves. Bai Muling, Jian Hui, Mushui Sisi, as well as Lu Renquang and Zhang Xuanyu, were dumbfounded at this moment. They felt that the void was trembling violently, as if it would completely shatter at any time. In fact, the situation was really similar. This was the first time that Han Fei had displayed such power in the chaotic ocean. His strength hadn't reached this level before, so he naturally didn't experience it. But at this moment, Han Fei felt the void trembling. He didn't know if he could throw this punch. Pang Jia was horrified. When he felt the crisis of death coming, he directly transformed into his original body, a huge turtle with a rugged black stone shell, and his head and everything else were all retracted. The turtle shell was shaking as if it was condensing a stronger defensive force. When Han Fei was halfway through his punch, the void in front of him collapsed, directly forming a small black hole, and a terrifying suction force was sucking in from it. The old turtle said, "The spatial structure of this place is not very stable. So if you go all out, it will easily cause the void to collapse. You'd better hold back a little." Han Fei had no experience in this aspect, so he was a little surprised. He had to adjust his state and slightly hold back his strength. It wasn't until he reduced his strength by more than 20% that the collapse of the void disappeared. And at this moment, Han Fei's punch finally hit Pang Jia. Hum ripples surged wildly. Zhang Xuanyu and the others couldn't see the battlefield at all, and their souls couldn't perceive it at all. In fact, just the impact alone was enough to make them feel powerless. Fortunately, Xia Xiaochan was also in the Pioneer Sea realm. At this moment, she stood in front of everyone and stretched out her hand to push out a void barrier. Only then did she manage to block the terrifying aftershock. "Han Fei, don't try to kill me." Sherpa Wang's voice came from afar. Xia Xiaochan suddenly shouted, "Mother?" Xia Xiaochan could feel the existence of Xia Hongzhu. Han Fei had been beaten like this, so Pang Jia must be killed. This killing was of great significance, almost as if he was declaring his strength. While killing Pang Jia, he was also telling the entire chaotic vast sea that Han Fei already had the power to open the sky, and whoever dared to go against him could have a try. Sure enough, Han Fei didn't stop because of Sherpa Wang's shout. Instead, he became more ferocious, and his strength poured out from his fist. Kacha! Crack! Crack! Pang Jia's void armor was penetrated layer by layer, and with a boom, it finally landed on his back. With this punch, all the defensive armor techniques of Pang Jia except his back armor were shattered, and his figure was instantly blasted thousands of miles away. But Han Fei was even faster. When he got the ultimate blade, he also got the ultimate speed. Although it was still far from the limit, he could cover the distance of thousands of miles in the blink of an eye. Those below the Challenger realm couldn't see the battle clearly anymore. Even Xia Xiaochan could barely keep up. Bang bang bang. In less than half a second after Sherpa Huang arrived, Han Fei hammered 23 times in a row from multiple directions. From multiple directions, Han Fei hammered 23 times in a row. Pang Jia's flesh and blood were all broken, and its shell was covered with cracks. Just as Sherpa Wang's hand was about to smash down, a golden trident pierced through the void and instantly pierced Sherpa Wang's body, causing him to explode. Xia Hongzhu's eyes were cold. Either retreat or die. Sherpa Huang was horrified. He looked at this person from a distance. He saw Chun Huangyan and Li Qingdi. And these two people were just standing on the woman's left and right. He couldn't help but be shocked. Is this the legendary one? Sherpa Huang was frightened by this blow. At this time, Xia Hongzhu finally showed up and looked into the distance. Over there, He Daoyuan, Bei Luochen, and Xian Qingzi were also looking in this direction. Not far away, on the side of the Martial Emperor city, the Martial Emperor appeared on the bow of the ship, watching this scene quietly. In the battlefield, Pang Jia didn't expect that Sherpa Huang would be blocked. He couldn't help but shout, "Emperor, help me! I'm not far from the sky." Hearing this, Sherpa Huang's aura fluctuated. Pang Jia was very likely to open the sky. If he could come out of the Imperial Palace safely, he must have gained a lot. Just look at Han Fei. How could Han Fei unleash such a terrifying power before? Sherpa Huang shouted, "Kong Shin, He Daoyuan, Bei Luochen, Xian Qingzi, you've seen Han Fei's growth. Today, he can kill Pang Jia. Xian Qingzi, how long do you think it will take him to kill you?" War Queen, I don't mean to offend you, but it's obvious that he wants to kill us. Please forgive me. Xian Qingzi's face darkened. Sherpa Wang's question was only because he had just opened the sky and was the weakest. However, it was also a reminder to Han Fei that he could attack him first in the future. Li Qingdi said leisurely, Sherpa Huang, you should know that you can't succeed today. On Kong Shun's side, Chun Huangyan held his head high and said disdainfully, Kong Shun, do you want to join the battle? On the other side, He Daoyuan, Bei Luochen, and Xian Qingzi, who didn't want to join the battle. However, Sherpa Huang didn't know what the situation was right now. Pang Jia was going to open the sky, and you were anxious? Sure enough, before the three of them moved, the sword god had already slashed the void and smiled gently. After all, Han Fei is an ally of the heavenly sword heaven. Tai Yuan said, Don't look at me. I won't join the battle, but I think Han Fei may be the reincarnation of a human king. I suggest you don't. Bei Luochen and the others were infuriated. What do you mean you don't? After Han Fei really opens the sky, when he attacks us, you'll also tell Han Fei that you don't join the battle? While everyone was hesitating, Han Fei seemed to burst out with power, and the image giant broke a layer of shell. Ho! Han Fei clasped the shell with his big hands and roared. His power shook the void and made the void ripple. Kacha! Chilla Bem Pang Jia's huge tortoiseshell was torn apart by Han Fei's hands. As Han Fei pointed with his two fingers, the Tao Convergence sword swept past Pang Jia, who was already unable to resist. Rumble, a crack appeared. Blood rained. Han Fei roared, Who else is in the Pioneer Sea realm? Chapter 2038. At this moment, Han Fei was like a demon, holding two pieces of wreckage in his hands. Even though he was surrounded by a pack of wolves, he wasn't afraid at all. Not because of the existence of his mother-in-law, Xia Hongzhu, nor because of the existence of his ally, the sword god, but because this place was very close to the imperial palace. Because as long as he willed it, he could flatten this place with one hand. Because of his extreme speed, he could ignore the pursuit of these heaven-opening state experts. Therefore, Han Fei unscrupulously absorbed Pang Jia's vitality. The nautical manifestation appeared in Han Fei's hand, and the 5 rings inside and outside were rotating. When the pointer was fixed, Han Fei reached out and pointed in the void, and the void node there shattered. Han Fei cast the Gemini Divine Technique, and walked in front of the emperors. With the strength of a heaven-opening state expert, his aura had weakened a lot, so they would definitely notice that he had gone in. But so what? Han Fei said, You want to leave the chaotic Azure Sea, don't you? He Daoyuan Bei Luochen, is this what you want? Well, maybe not, because you don't have the guts to go out. Look, this is Pang Jia's origin sea. Sherpa Huang, I seized his origin sea in front of you. Are you very angry? Do you want to come up and bite me? Han Fei smiled coldly. Since you're all here, you don't have to hide anymore. My Yinyang Heaven and your Grand Pure Wuji have a deep grudge. You've plotted against me several times. Now I'm standing here. Do you still want to plot against me? Humph! Bei Luochen snorted coldly. Han Fei, is arrogance the reason why you're so proud? Do you think you can use it to cooperate with the mermaids? Is it reasonable to betray the human race? F***CKU. Han Fei pointed at Bei Luochen. You keep saying that the human race is the human race, but you haven't done a damn thing for the human race. In the Yinyang Heaven, I'm also respected by tens of thousands of people. You rotten old man, other than living a long life in vain and only thinking about eradicating dissidents, what else do you know? How dare you? Han Fei followed Bei Luochen and shouted, What? Come and hit me! You think I don't dare? Bei Luochen attacked angrily. The black moon floated in the air, and the blood leech opened its eyes. It let go of its hand and slashed across the void for millions of miles. With scarlet blood and the pressure of an emperor, it slashed toward Han Fei. Han Fei smiled. Tai Yuan was the first to shake his head speechlessly, thinking that Bei Luochen must have been exasperated. Han Fei was clearly trying to establish his might. He wanted to forcibly become one of the peak powers of the chaotic Azure Sea. At the same time, he wanted to let all the Sea Expansion Kings know just how terrifying he was. There was a purpose to this, but he was not sure what it was. However, Bei Luochen had obviously fallen for it. He had wanted Bei Luochen to attack him. However, under such circumstances, even if Bei Luochen were to make a move, he couldn't really attack Han Fei. He could only attack from a distance, trying to suppress Han Fei with his strength and teach him a lesson. However, how could Han Fei's current strength be underestimated? Tearing apart Pang Jia with his bare hands, this power could no longer be measured with the power of the Sea Expansion Realm. This was clearly the power of the Heaven-Opening Realm. Therefore, when Bei Luochen attacked, Han Fei countered with an immortal killing aura. The immortal spiritual qi and the ferocious qi intertwined, and Han Fei was not weak in the first place. Although Bei Luochen's attack was also fierce, it couldn't forcibly wipe out the immortal killing aura. Rumble, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, the two collided, the void collapsed, and billions of seawater were sucked into the endless void. In addition to the explosion of power, there was still a part of the immortal killing aura, which actually shattered Bei Luochen's attack and continued to fly towards him. Although there was not much of this power left, maybe not even 1/10 of it. However, this was a manifestation of strength, a powerful oath, and a form of intimidation. Sure enough, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, countless beast kings gasped. Toad, who had just come out of the Imperial Palace, was shocked. That Han Fei has become so strong. It's only been 3 years, and he has the power comparable to the Heaven-Opening Realm. A giant beast seashell pulled it and scolded, "Don't get too close. This is the Heaven-Opening Realm, and he likes to use our bodies as materials. Why are you so close? Do you want to die?" Xia Zhiming watched the battle from afar, but she was also stunned by the power Han Fei had displayed. He had torn apart Pang Jia with his bare hands and pierced through Bei Luochen's attack. This person. Was there any way for her to take revenge? Old Lady Qiu's heart was trembling at this moment. How long has it been? Han Fei, who was cautious and had to run away at the slightest sign of trouble. How many years has it been? Now he dares to challenge the beast kings of the chaotic vast sea? Hong Yu, who was lucky enough to survive, swallowed from time to time as he watched this scene. He told himself, if Han Fei doesn't die today, no one in the chaotic vast sea can kill him anymore. When I go back, the first thing I have to do is to collect the 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones that Han Fei wants. This is a life-saving money. I have to give it to him. Seeing that his goal had been achieved, Han Fei sneered. Bei Luochen, you are old. Whether you are a heaven-opening realm or not, you are old after all. Do you really think I care about the old grudges? No, it's just that you are too aggressive. Now, I haven't opened the sky yet, so I can't do anything to you. But when do you have a way to deal with me? Wait, when I grow up, I will find you one by one, unless you leave the chaotic vast sea. At this moment, He Daoyuan said leisurely, "Young man, sometimes don't be too arrogant. You may be able to escape today, but it doesn't mean that you can escape for long." Escape? Han Fei sneered. He Daoyuan, don't think too highly of yourself. Today, I dare to stay here because I'm confident that I can leave. You've missed too many opportunities to kill me. Now, you won't have another chance. Today, I'm just telling you one thing. Wash your neck and wait for me to kill you. How dare you? Bei Luochen snorted. If it weren't for the complicated structure of the people here, he would have taken action. He Daoyuan was also disdainful. Young man, it's windy here. Don't bite your tongue. Xia Hongzhu couldn't help but touch the trident in her hand. Her sole perception just now was synchronized with the mark on Xia Xiaochan's body. She saw the scene where Han Fei attacked the powerhouse of the Ascendant God's heaven. She even saw some of the private behaviors between the two of them. At least for now, on the surface, Han Fei didn't seem too bad. The only thing that didn't make her feel good was that Xia Xiaochan and Han Fei were too intimate, much more intimate than she was with her. Just like her, she was also somewhat unable to extricate herself from love. At this time, because of the return of the sixth vine in the demon purification pot, the absorption speed was faster. There were as many as 10,500 wisps of chaotic energy in Pang Jia's origin sea, which were all absorbed by him. In addition, Han Fei found a lot of resources in Pang Jia's origin sea. If measured in terms of spiritual stones, the number would probably exceed 5 billion. Among them, there was a bronze jade shield technique, which should have been obtained by Pang Jia in the Imperial Palace, and now belonged to him. The reason why Han Fei was chatting with Bei Luochen and the others here was naturally for Pang Jia's resources. Of course, he had another deeper purpose. That was to frighten the 36 Xiantian heavens and demand control of the 13 outer heavens. However, Han Fei wouldn't take this control right away. He hadn't opened the sky yet. If he insisted on taking this control, Bei Luochen and the others would probably be more than happy to give it to him. At that time, the 100 demons and the underwater humans would take action themselves, and they would play tricks on them. How could the 13 outer heavens resist them? How could he have time to practice opening the sky? Therefore, Han Fei killed Pang Jia openly today just to frighten the 36 Xiantian heavens and to take control of the 13 outer heavens at a specific time in the future. Now that his purpose had basically been achieved, Han Fei knew that it was time for him to go. Han Fei leaped with a golden light and came to Xia Xiaochan and the others. Putting away his body, the phantoms of mountains and rivers appeared around Han Fei, and he said lightly, "Since no one wants me to stay, I'm leaving." He Daoyuan looked at Xia Hongzhu and said lightly, "Believe me, the appearance of the War Queen won't protect you for long." Ha ha ha! Han Fei laughed. I, Han Fei, have been through many life and death situations in my life. When have I ever needed someone to protect me? Han Fei leaped with a golden light and appeared 600,000 kilometers away. His running speed was unparalleled in the world. In the void, Han Fei's voice was left behind, echoing for millions of kilometers. I, Han Fei, call myself the Human King. In a few days, I will first slaughter the Grand Pure One, then kill the Wuji race, then suppress the 100 demons, and kill Kong Shen. The future is long, and all the emperors will stretch their necks to wait for me to appear again. Chapter 2039. This time, a total of 13 people from the Yinyang Heaven came back from the trip to the Imperial Palace. The loss rate was as high as 60%, which was what Han Fei had told them. However, Han Fei could only focus on some of them, and the rest depended on their own luck. And now, among the 13 people, 8 of them were confident in passing the tribulation, and they were all outstanding figures from the Yinyang Heaven. The Imperial Palace itself didn't have the conditions to become a king, so they had to pass the tribulation after coming out of the Imperial Palace. Even if they entered the Imperial Palace and became a king, they didn't do it in the Imperial Palace. They did it after leaving the Imperial Palace. Only the third day after leaving the Underground Palace, Jiao Mengwei of the Demon Beast Alliance couldn't suppress her aura anymore and began to pass the tribulation outside the Yinyang Heaven. On this day, the venerables of the Yinyang Heaven were watching. Who didn't want to pass the tribulation and become a king? However, to everyone's surprise, Jiao Mengwei turned into a dragon in the midst of the tribulation. Horns grew out of her head, and limbs grew out of her body. She broke through the 9 realm tribulations and became a king. Seeing this scene, Old Sheep sighed. This is the great world. This is not the great world yet. Han Fei appeared next to Old Sheep. This guy had already passed the tribulation and became a pseudo-king, so he couldn't pass the tribulation again in his life. However, Han Fei knew that Old Sheep was already cultivating an incarnation. It seemed that Old Sheep didn't want to die like this. It thought that the great world had just arrived and the cage had just been broken. How could it be willing to grow old? Only one day after Jiao Mengwe passed the tribulation, the insect king chose another place to pass the tribulation. It was wearing a bright red insect armor and holding the horns of the heavenly bull. Another 7 days later, Zi Luo passed the tribulation and the first king appeared in the forest of terror. On the same day, Han Fei accompanied Ren Tianfei to pass the tribulation. A month later, Luo Xiaobai passed the tribulation and became a king. 3 months later, Lu Renquang passed the tribulation successfully. 8 months later. At this moment, in the mist sea, lightning was shining and purple qi was roaring. Zhang Xuanyu had gone through 5 tribulations and became one with the golden bone. At this moment, the 9th purple lightning rumbled down. Zhang Xuanyu's divine soul cracked, and the energy of the spirit fruit under his feet surged up. In the vast thunder, Zhang Xuanyu murmured in a voice that only he could hear, nobody can open the heavenly gate. Dazzling heavenly Tao, only I wield the spear. Only this Tao can break through the obstacles in front of me, break through the barriers of all worlds, kill. No one knew who Zhang Xuanyu was, but Han Fei saw it clearly. A knocking sound came from the sky. It was not the void but the great path. Clang! Dang! Clang! The heavenly tribulation dissipated, and a golden jade divine spear appeared in front of Zhang Xuanyu. The cracks on Zhang Xuanyu's body had already disappeared. Zhang Xuanyu suddenly opened his eyes. From today onwards, if the spear exists, the man lives. If the spear breaks, the man dies. My Tao is only me. Lu Renquang exclaimed, Where did he get that gun? Han Fei said solemnly, That's not a gun, but his life. The rise of the yin-yang heaven was already unstoppable. Now there were a total of 13 kings, which had surpassed most of the forces in the 36 Xiantian heavens. However, because they had just entered the sea expansion realm, they couldn't be compared with old Wang, who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Even Ren Tianfei, who had become a king, was only equivalent to the top 20 on the sea expansion list. This kind of growth speed was already extremely terrifying because Ren Tianfei used to be a king. Because they were all new kings, Han Fei ordered everyone to rest and build up their strength. Including himself, he had to slowly digest what he got from the imperial palace. 30 years later, in the Origin Sea, Han Fei was guiding the essence of the earth veins to form the entire Origin Sea into a main meridian. The size of the Origin Sea had already reached 100,000 kilometers long ago. Otherwise, Han Fei's strength wouldn't have soared so much. Even the space couldn't bear his full blow. The past 30 years were actually almost 2,000 years for Han Fei. Even if half of the time was excluded, it was still equivalent to more than 1,000 years. After so many years, Han Fei had his own experience, which was that the way he set up the Origin Sea would affect his strength. Beside Han Fei was old Yuan, who looked like Gui Sanqing. At this moment, the two of them were discussing the layout of the earth veins. The old turtle said, After you open the sky, heaven and earth will be integrated, and the great Tao will be precipitated. The Origin Sea will continuously produce much more Tao than the sea expansion realm. The Origin Sea even has the ability to transform spiritual energy into chaotic energy spontaneously. And the layout of the Origin Sea can make all the resources in the Origin Sea gradually melt into the Origin Sea and become a part of this world. At that time, the spiritual energy in this world can even be born and disappear on its own, mutually conserved and never exhausted. Han Fei was surprised. Can the spiritual energy in the Origin Sea never dry up? The old turtle said, Not yet. Since we're going to fight, we'll have to consume the spiritual energy. However, it is said that the limit of the Origin Sea, the beginning of the longevity realm, can achieve this situation of never drying up. Han Fei sneered. Nonsense. You didn't see it at that time. Chu Hao was exhausted, and I even suspect that his Origin Sea was destroyed. As long as the origin sea belongs to the same body as you, it will be a relationship of prosperity and destruction. Resources and energy are fixed. As long as they are consumed, they will eventually be used up. The old turtle said, "Recycling is enough." In the battle of the origin sea, no one will worry about resources and energy. Because they have accumulated enough resources, there are a large number of reserves in the origin sea, which can be used at any time with a thought. In Han Fei's original coastal area, an underground river was being developed following Han Fei's gaze. Han Fei really opened up the earth veins everywhere and built a huge network of earth veins. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, "Old Yuan, my origin sea has been developed to 100,000 kilometers. If it continues to expand at this rate, how many resources will I need?" The old tortoise said, "You finally asked this question." Han Fei was speechless. "Do you have to wait for me to ask before you tell me?" The old turtle said, "Because there is no need to know for the time being. It will only add to your troubles. But since you asked, I can explain it to you. Because the origin sea needs to be constantly expanded, the heaven-opening realm masters and even the emperors will expand the wilderness, explore the chaos, search for planets with life, and plunder resources to enrich the origin sea. You know, it is not easy to grow in any realm. Explore the chaos, search the wilderness, and if you encounter a primitive land or something, it is very easy to die." Han Fei asked, "Wait, what wilderness? What chaos? What primitive land?" The old turtle said, "Well, it's some new worlds outside the sea realm. We can explore from the chaos. However, every time such a place is opened up, all kinds of competitions and killings are inevitable. So, in the past, there were still gods rising. But as it becomes more and more difficult to open up new primitive lands, it becomes more and more difficult to become God." Han Fei couldn't help but have a lot of fanciful thoughts. So, after the sky was opened and the heaven and the earth merged, the origin sea needed to be expanded, and everyone had to fight for more resources? If this was the case, the so-called sea realm should be very poor in resources, right? The old turtle said, "This is still far from you. You'd better open the sky first. You don't have many resources now. Is it time to go out and search for resources?" Han Fei nodded slightly. For 1,000 years, 90% of his resources had been contributed to the origin sea. Just for this, he specially went to the wild corpse heaven, but he didn't expect that Hong Yu had already prepared the resources he needed. In this way, he didn't have to take the initiative to plunder. However, even if Hong Yu provided another 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones, it was only enough for Han Fei to make arrangements in the 90,000 kilometers of the origin sea. Of course, Han Fei didn't forget the share that the demon purification pot needed. However, after the demon purification pot swallowed about 5 billion or so, it stopped swallowing. Han Fei fed it with the chaotic chi again, but it still didn't eat. However, Han Fei found that the power of the Great Path generated in his origin sea was slowly swallowed by the demon purification pot. The fourth divine pill was between maturity and immaturity. But Han Fei was not too anxious. He hadn't opened the sky yet, and there were still many people to fight in the chaotic sea. When everything calmed down, only God knew when he would be in charge of this world. Han Fei couldn't help but glance at his information. Owner Han Fei level greater than 99, see expansion. See family tree 840006, chaotic chi greater than 110,568 strands, spiritual power 1001516, perception range 1 million kilometers, power greater than 490,468 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein. Second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 90. Second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 92. Main art, time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine. Quality. Looking at this information, Han Fei was calm. This was almost his limit. because Han Fei found that it had become extremely difficult to improve his strength now. If it weren't for the void body refinement art, Han Fei felt that the limit of his strength growth in the sea expansion stage was about 430,000 waves with the pure mystic body. But now, his strength had reached 490,000 waves, mainly due to the limitation of his physique. His physique was already too strong to the point that it began to limit his growth. However, because of the continuous growth of his physique, his golden bones had begun to change qualitatively. The golden bones began to change into the color of golden jade. The texture was like jade, the bones were golden, and the bones were no longer turbid but as smooth as jade. However, this transformation had only been carried out by about 30%. Han Fei suspected that this was also one of the factors that limited his growth. This was a body refinement direction that even he hadn't figured out yet. Chapter 2040. 1,000 years had passed in the Origin Sea, but only 30 years had passed in the outside world. Holding a green gourd in his hand, Han Fei raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine from time to time. Han Fei had started drinking the 1,000-year Tao-seeking wine as soon as he left the imperial palace, but it was finished in less than 50 years. 2,000 years had passed, and he had saved up a pile of it, which should be enough for 100 years. The Tao-seeking wine was indeed outstanding in its own way. When Han Fei first practiced the void body refinement art and the void sky observation technique, he couldn't get the hang of it for 10 years. He drank this wine every day until his head felt dizzy. As soon as his head felt dizzy, inspirations came one after another, and he gradually entered a good state. But it couldn't really help him understand the Tao. It should be very useful for those below the sea expansion stage. For himself, because at his level, he had already comprehended almost everything he needed to comprehend. He couldn't just comprehend blindly all day long, right? Thousand Star City, Central Holy City. When Han Fei arrived, there were already a lot of people living here. However, the living conditions of the Central Holy City were extremely harsh. Those who could come in were all venerables, which led to not many people coming in. Even after 30 years, the total number of venerables from the Yin-Yang Heaven, the Waterwood Heaven, and the Demon Beast Alliance had only 621 people. And this was because they had just come out of the original small world and come into contact with the new environment of the chaotic Azure Sea, which had so many resources. Therefore, the number of venerables had increased very fast. Because of the depression in the small world, it was normal for them to grow faster after all the pressure was released. Han Fei's arrival didn't attract too much attention. Only Ren Tianfen and the other kings noticed him. Ren Tianfen grumbled, "You didn't come here after your immortal palace became a ruin. I invited Luo Xiaobai to come over and fix your immortal palace." Swish! Han Fei stepped into the palace and grabbed a spiritual fruit on the table. Chomp! Han Fei took a casual bite and said indifferently, "It's not dangerous up there. Why don't you fix it?" Ren Tianfen snorted. "I'm a man. How can I do that?" Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Then who's going to fix your Origin Sea for you? Do you need someone else to help you?" Ren Tianfei shrugged. "Why do you care? What? You came out after 30 years of seclusion? Yin-Yang Heaven and Waterwood Heaven have only been here for a short period of time. You can rest for another 100 years. The Yin-Yang Heaven shouldn't have been discovered in a mere 100 years. Han Fei shook his head. "My bones are already stiff. If I don't, I'll be crippled. I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. I've already used up all my resources. I need to find more." Ren Tianfei was lost for words. "Didn't you bring back 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones 10 years ago? Again?" Han Fei said with a black face, "My Origin Sea has expanded to 100,000 kilometers. Do you think it's free?" Ren Tianfei nodded. "That's true. My guess is that the Origin Sea should be able to be developed using higher-grade energy. Otherwise, it will naturally be more and more difficult to develop it with just top-grade spirit stones. I've tried. The chaotic energy can be expanded, but it consumes too much. Besides, the chaotic energy can maintain the overall quality of the origin sea, so it's best not to use it to expand the origin sea. After all, the environment in the chaotic ocean is too poor. It's suppressed by the Imperial Palace and can't go to the outside world. Otherwise, I can get some mysterious yellow stones, which are very effective in expanding the origin sea. Mysterious yellow stones. If the mysterious yellow gas in the dragon-subduing heaven can be condensed into crystals or semi-crystals, it can probably become mysterious yellow stones. Ren Tianfei nodded. This thing is indeed rare in the chaotic ocean, and it doesn't seem to be very common in the Imperial Palace either. Han Fei thought to himself, it's a pity that my 1,000,000 mysterious yellow stones were all swallowed by the demon purification pot. Otherwise, I could still use them now. Of course, 1,000,000 might still be a little too few in terms of quantity. Anyway, because of the lack of resources, Han Fei couldn't even study the more powerful functions of the demon purification pot. Han Fei couldn't help but hold the 4 jade slips in his hand. When the jade slips were activated, only a few minutes later, blue flowers bloomed here, and Luo Xiaobai had arrived. Han Fei said in surprise, "You're here so soon?" Luo Xiaobai said, "My origin sea has been set up a long time ago. The seaborne prairie is very suitable for my cultivation, so there's no need to stay in the origin sea all the time." Zhang Xuanyu appeared with a swish and said with a smile, "It's mainly because our origin sea is too small and the resources are limited. The chaotic gas, ultra-quality spiritual stones, and mother lodes didn't make much of a splash when we threw them into it. It's still misty." Then, Xia Xiaochan and Lu Renquang arrived one after another. Xia Xiaochan said, "Thanks to Xiaobai's discovery of a large ultra-quality mother lode, we dug about 8 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones in total. Otherwise, our growth would still be very slow." This was the first time that Han Fei had heard of an ultra-quality mother lode. Anyway, he hadn't encountered one. However, so many ultra-quality spiritual stones in the Azure Sea couldn't have fallen from the sky. He had never thought of mining before. Maybe he could try it in the future. Maybe it would be faster than robbing. Luo Xiaobai said, "In the seaborne prairie where we are, there are as many as 8,000 kinds of minerals buried underground. It's not surprising to find an ultra-quality mother lode. It's just that the concentration of spiritual energy around has been reduced by about 20% after we dug the mother lode." Han Fei shrugged and said, "So be it. Ordinary people only need to absorb spiritual energy from the void. However, I've run out of resources too. We can't just sit around and eat or we'll lose everything." Immediately, Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renquang's eyes lit up. "What do you mean? Which family are you going to attack?" Luo Xiaobai asked. "Do you already have a plan?" Xia Xiaochan asked. "How many people do you need?" Ren Tianfei was speechless as he listened on the side. If all the kings were as radical as these little bastards, the 36 mysterious heavens would have been doomed. But Ren Tianfei was curious too. "You're strong now, but it's obviously not wise to attack the Grand Pure Wuji Palace." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "The Grand Pure Palace is not far from the Wuji Palace. The 3 emperors are guarding it. Even if we can fight them, it will give the demons and the human beings at the bottom of the sea an opportunity. Even the royal mermaids can't be easily trusted." Luo Xiaobai looked at Xia Xiaochan. "Xiaochan, it's hard to say. Maybe we'll be fine, but the entire human race might." The corner of Lu Renquang's mouth twitched. "Do we have to be so radical?" Han Fei grinned and said, "No. We're not targeting the Grand Pure Palace or the Wuji Palace." Xia Xiaochan smiled. "So, we're going to the investiture heaven?" Zhang Xuanyu's eyes lit up. "That's great. Those B***stards chase Xia Xiaochan every day. It's time for them to pay the price." Luo Xiaobai asked, What about Huang Jingyuan? Didn't they say that he's very strong? And the investiture heaven and the gods' arrival technique? It's said that he's as strong as Emperor Li Qingdi. Han Fei smiled and said, Huang Jingyuan is strong, but we have allies. I still don't know much about the heaven opening state. I have to go to the Sword God Heaven. 7 days later. In the Sword God Palace, in the Sword Forging Pool. This was the place where the Sword God cultivated in seclusion. Ordinary people rarely came here. Han Fei had seen the Sword God before. At that time, he thought he was a king. His first impression was that although this person was cold, he looked gentle and didn't have the fierceness of a sword cultivator at all. Besides, at that time the sword god Lu Li, Lu Yu, and the others seemed to be just peers, so he gave people the illusion that he was just a king. But now that he thought about it, perhaps the sword god had already reached the point where he could restrain his sword aura. A million kilometers away from the Sword God Palace, Han Fei's perception reached this place. Outside the sword-casting pool, there were divine swords humming as if welcoming Han Fei's arrival. The sword god's voice sounded. Rare guest, please come in. With 2 streaks of golden light, Han Fei had already landed in the sword-casting pool. The place where the swords were forged was hidden in a canyon. It was said that the swords here were forged one by one. However, very few people were qualified to obtain swords. Outside the sword-casting pool, there were many swords stuck in the cliffs on both sides. Among these swords, there were no less than 20 sea-quelling bizarre treasures, and the strongest of them had already reached the level of an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure. However, as soon as Han Fei came, the aura of a strong master attracted countless peerless swords, causing them to keep humming. Quiet! A loud voice reverberated in the canyon. Suddenly, all the swords fell silent. Han Fei took another step and appeared outside the real sword forging pool. There was a place covered in earthly flames and a strange formation set up here, which was the sword furnace. In the sword furnace, there was a black longsword, plain and unsharpened. It seemed that it hadn't been forged yet. However, although he couldn't feel the sword intent, Han Fei always wanted to reach out and try this sword. The sword god walked out, his sleeves hanging casually, and said with a faint smile, "This sword has been forged for 3,333 years. I wanted to try to forge a sword beyond the level of a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, but unfortunately, I haven't met anyone worthy of my trust, so I haven't forged this sword for a long time." Han Fei raised his eyelids and said jokingly, "Senior, what do you think of me?" The sword god said, "Nothing. This sword won't choose you until the path of swordsmanship is opened." Han Fei smiled. "That's a pity. I hope this sword can meet its lover and be born soon." The sword god nodded slightly and invited Han Fei to the sword hut for a while. The two sat opposite each other, and the sword god said, "You seem to be very vigorous and can't be suppressed. Have you touched the threshold of the heaven-opening realm?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "Yes, but don't worry." The sword god said, "Young man, it's not easy for you to be able to fight steadily. I was right about you. There should only be one person in the entire chaotic vast sea who can come here in the Pioneer Sea realm." Han Fei was surprised. "Who?" "You should know him. The mermaid royal family, the War Queen. She is said to be the son of gods. She cultivates a divine body and is invincible in the Pioneer Sea realm. She once fought with the human king. If the human king walked the Tianqi Dao, she would have been defeated." Chapter 2041. My Mother-in-Law? The Sword God. This was the first time Han Fei had heard of this kind of history. He knew that the cultivation potential of a divine scion was extremely high. But he didn't expect his mother-in-law to be so strong. According to the Sword God, if his mother-in-law and he were in the same realm, he might not be able to beat her. But Han Fei didn't care. Who would know if he didn't fight her? Besides, their basic combat power might be equal, but his mother-in-law's great Tao might not be stronger than his. Since Han Fei was here, he didn't hide anything. He said, "I'm here for two things, and I may need Senior Sword God's help." The Sword God looked up at Han Fei. "Tell me about it." Han Fei smiled and said, "Senior, you know, in this chaotic azure sea, I've basically offended all the heaven-opening realms. The human race and the mermaid royal family have different daos, so I can only ask you about the heaven-opening realm powerhouse. I want to ask about the combat power standard of the heaven-opening realm and the experience of opening the sky." Han Fei had already asked the old turtle these two questions. But the old turtle was not a human, so the situation of opening the sky was somewhat different from his. According to the old turtle's experience, if all the great daos kept up, the lowest power of a heaven-opening realm could reach at least 600,000 wave. However, after opening the sky, the great Tao would grow wildly, the origin sea would be fully used, and the combat efficiency would be higher. Both his physique and spiritual power would skyrocket, and his bloodline would also be improved. So, in summary, even the lowest level of the heaven-opening realm was ridiculously strong and not something a sea-opening realm powerhouse could resist. The Sword God shook his head slightly. A sword cultivator opening the sky is different from a normal person opening the sky. I'm afraid I can't answer your question. If you are a sword cultivator, you can learn some experience from here. But since you asked, I can tell you about the combat power after opening the sky. First of all, the heaven-opening realm is not as strong as you think. I guess your current pure power should be 400,000 waves, right? Han Fei's heart did a flip. It seemed that even the Sword God was wrong. However, then he heard the Sword God say, "Generally speaking, 400,000 waves seems to be the ceiling of the sea-opening realm. Even the peak strength of the grand primordial realm was only more than 350,000 wave. Although strength could not be used to measure strength, it could be used as a comparison. Li Qingdi's strength had reached more than 390,000 wave. He is currently the strongest one apart from the War Queen." Han Fei's heart stirred, and he could not help asking, "What about the martial emperors?" The Sword God shook his head slightly. "I have not fought with a martial emperor before, but I estimate that he should be on par with Emperor Li Qingdi, or even slightly stronger. Even if it exceeds 400,000 waves, it won't exceed by much." Han Fei frowned. The old turtle also said that his peak strength was 400,000. Was this a threshold? However, his current strength was already close to 500,000. Sword God continued, "That's the standard I know of for the peak of sea expansion. Of course, secret techniques don't count. Once you've reached sea expansion, using secret techniques will only exhaust your potential, unless they're at an extremely high level." The Sword God was probably trying to remind Han Fei. He had seen Han Fei's attack. When he killed Pang Jia, the power he displayed was so huge that the void collapsed and he had to withdraw his power. It was precisely because of Han Fei's combat power that the emperors gave up the idea of starting a war. Otherwise, with the War Queen's protection, they might still try it. The Sword God smiled slightly. "The power you erupt with actually exceeds that of ordinary powerhouses who have just entered the heaven-opening state. Take Xian Qingzi as an example. Although this person is talented, I don't think he is very strong as an emperor because his foundation is weak. Therefore, I can conclude that if we calculate purely based on his current level of power, it will not exceed 800,000 wave." "So low?" Han Fei couldn't help exclaiming. "How could the heaven-opening state be so weak?" "Low?" The Sword God shook his head slightly. "Strength is not the main measure of the combat power of the heaven-opening state. Although Xian Qingzi's strength may not exceed 800,000 waves so far, if he really drives it with the Great Way, his combat power will be stronger than the peak state you showed before." Han Fei thought to himself, "But it's not necessarily stronger than my current state, right?" Han Fei asked, "Senior, what was your original strength?" The Sword God didn't hide it and said casually, When I first entered, it was 920,000 waves. I'm telling you this just to let you have a basic judgment. According to my guess, the weakest heaven-opening state may at least have more than 600,000 waves when they first entered the heaven-opening state. No matter how low it is, it should be impossible. Perhaps, in the outside world, there are many existences who have more than 1,000,000 waves when they first entered the heaven-opening state. But in the chaotic ocean, there are very few of them. Maybe you can count as one. But now, I advise you not to challenge the heaven-opening state before you reach the peak of the sea-opening state. Among the people you want to challenge, I'm afraid the only one you can fight is Xianqingzi. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Senior, have you guessed why I'm here? The sword god smiled lightly. You should know that with He Daoyuan and Bei Luochen guarding the Grand Purity Palace and the Wuji Heaven, you have no chance. You can't catch Xianqingzi. You won't fight the 100 demons and the seabed humans in advance. So the only one I can think of is investiture of the gods' heaven. However, the time when you are going to attack investiture of the gods' heaven is beyond my expectation. I didn't expect you to come out after only 30 years of seclusion. Han Fei thought to himself, 30 years is already a long time. I'm seriously short of resources now. If I don't go out and get some resources, God knows when I can reach the peak of the sea-opening state. Han Fei said, I want to try. The sword god looked at Han Fei. You should know the difference of investiture of the god's heaven, right? Han Fei nodded. The so-called god's arrival is equivalent to a super-secret method, which can double your strength. Besides, investiture of the god's heaven has always been mysterious. I don't know if there are other strong masters there. This is a problem. The sword god nodded slightly. Yes. Huang Jingyuan may not be as strong as Emperor Li Qingdi, He Daoyuan, or me. But if he really breaks out, it is definitely not a problem for him to deal with them for a while or even longer. If you want to attack investiture of the god's heaven now, you need to consider whether it is possible that you are walking into a trap. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, unless there is a second heaven-opening state in investiture of the god's heaven. If there isn't, except for Huang Jingyuan, no one is a match for me. Even if there is a second heaven-opening state in investiture of the god's heaven, as long as his strength is only at Xianqingzi's level, I am not afraid. Of course, the premise is that Senior is willing to help. If I help and conquer investiture of the god's heaven, I can share the resources with Senior. The sword god was a little surprised. Do you think you can beat Xianqingzi now? Han Fei said deeply, Senior, if I am strong enough, can I crush Xianqingzi? For example, the power of more than 2,000,000 waves. The sword god was stunned. He couldn't help but look sideways again. Such a strong power, even if it was his current limit, was at most to this extent. The sword god said, when a kind of power is strong to the extreme, it can naturally cause a situation of crushing. But even so, it is easy for you to beat him, but I am afraid it will not be easy to kill him. After all, the power of the Emperor, the Origin Sea, is endless. As long as the Origin Sea and the Great Tao are not obliterated, it is difficult for you to kill the Emperor. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. I see. However, Senior, please help me. I need the resources of investiture of the god's heaven. The sword god narrowed his eyes slightly. Even if I help, can you conquer investiture of the god's heaven? Although many kings of investiture of the god's heaven have died, there is no second heaven-opening state. However, I can still offer a dozen kings. Besides, that is Huang Jingyuan's own territory. Han Fei said, I offer 25 kings. However, my purpose this time is not only to plunder the resources of investiture of the god's heaven. I also want to kill him. The sword god didn't expect Han Fei to have such a big appetite. It was not that no one had ever thought about killing an emperor, but since the appearance of an emperor in the chaotic ocean, no one had died so far. The sword god wondered, If you want to kill an emperor, do you know that you have to cut off its great Tao to have a chance? Han Fei nodded. I know. Since Han Fei was preparing to kill an emperor in only 30 years, he had naturally consulted the old turtle about some things. It was not impossible to kill an emperor. The extreme state of the infinity water could turn it into a Tao and kill the soul to cut off the Tao. But Han Fei hadn't tried it, so it should be difficult. However, he and the old turtle had also discussed a strategy, and they felt that it was feasible, so they were ready to take action. Besides, Han Fei wasn't unprepared this time. In the past 30 years, Han Fei had gone to the 10,000 poison heaven 7 times and concocted a great poison with Huang Jie. Although it couldn't kill an emperor after repeated calculations, it could at least reduce the strength of a heaven opener by 30%. Of course, these were all his own means. This time, he came to see the Sword God to see if the Sword God had a way to protect himself. The Sword God said, "It seems that you have been preparing for this for a long time, right? Did you come to me because you think it's time?" Han Fei nodded. "But no matter how much preparation I make, I can't predict the specific situation of the war. On the battlefield, all accidents can happen. If Senior can help me, my odds of winning can reach 60%. The Sword God pondered for a long time. In fact, breaking through the investiture of the god's heaven and killing Huang Jingyuan was not very good for him. Because Huang Jingyuan didn't target the human race except for the mermaid royal family. Han Fei asked for an equal share of resources. Although the amount was considerable, he was not short of resources. Even if he got them, he would only give them to the kings of the heavenly sword heaven. Therefore, what Han Fei really wanted to confirm with him this time was to see if he was going to bet on him. The sword god was silent for a moment and looked at the sword in the sword-casting pool. After a long time, he said, "Half an hour. If we can't conquer the investiture of the god's heaven in half an hour, retreat immediately." Han Fei immediately grinned. "Thank you, Senior." The sword god nodded. "Don't thank me yet. If you want to kill Huang Jingyuan, even I can't do it. So, you need to suffer a little." Han Fei smiled and said, "If I can kill an emperor, what's a little suffering? What do you want, Senior?" The sword god nodded. "I want to give you a sword strike." Chapter 2042. 1 month later. 9 Palace Heaven. What? Last time you attacked the Grand Purity Palace, and now you want to kill an emperor? Han Xian was furious. His nephew was good at everything and had great potential. It could be said that he was invincible in the Pioneer Sea realm. However, he was too aggressive. Anyway, when Han Fei dragged Han Xian to fight, Han Xian was really shocked. "Brother, do you want to reconsider? I heard that he is a super strong master comparable to the Sword God." Han Fei shook his head and said, "I have made up my mind. Senior Sword God will fight with me. In addition, if you count Uncle Xian, there are a total of 25 kings. Uncle Xian, if you are really worried, why don't you support a few kings?" Although Han Xian seemed to be the only king in 9 Palace Heaven, Han Xian also said that every time the Imperial Palace opened, there would be strong masters in 9 Palace Heaven. After tens of thousands of years, there must be a lot of people who survive. Han Fei believed that there must be someone among them who could be called a king. The most obvious point was the information channel that Han Xian had mastered. Although 9 Palace Heaven was closed, he could always get first-hand information. Someone must have passed it to him in Martial Emperor City. Han Fei said, "Uncle Xian, the investiture of God's heaven. If we can take it down, how many resources will we get? 100 billion won't be enough. And all kinds of resources and treasures, countless." The corner of Han Xian's mouth twitched, and he said helplessly, "Are you so confident that you can kill Huang Jingyuan?" Han Fei said, "I just can't kill Huang Jingyuan. With so many kings, how can investiture heaven resist us? Do you think Senior Sword God, me, and 25 kings can't defeat investiture heaven?" Han Xian couldn't help asking, "Where did you get 25 kings? How many do you have in Yinyang heaven and Waterwood heaven? Even if there are, they should not be strong, right?" Han Fei said leisurely, "Yinyang heaven and Waterwood heaven have 13 in total. Except for me, the strongest one can enter the top 20 on the Pioneer Sea list. In addition to these, I have reported the major pirate groups that have cooperated with us one by one." Han Xian's eyelids twitched wildly. Han Fei is really going all out this time. With such a huge lineup, it was clear that they were determined to take down God's Bane heaven. Han Xian said, "Ever since the end of days, there has never been a monarch of the chaotic Azure Sea who has fallen. Although I believe that I can barely block a sovereign for a while, that's only against someone like Xian Qingzi who has just split open the heavens. Do you really dare to suppress all the forces of the Yinyang heaven?" Han Fei roared, "Suppress them? I swore that the God-sealing heaven, the supreme purity palace, and the limitless heaven won't be able to escape. I'm going to take them down one by one. Uncle Xian, this is how I will walk the path of splitting open the heavens." Han Xian's expression changed. He lowered his head to look at his Qianji godly ghost disk, and took a deep breath. "Good. Then I will accompany you on this journey. Just as the sword god said, if you can't take him down in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, you must not continue fighting." Han Fei nodded. "Of course. If we can't take down the Seal God's heaven in half an hour after gathering so many forces, I will lie low for 100 years and then take action again." Han Xian and Han Yiner were speechless at Han Fei's passionate words. What did it mean to lie dormant for 100 years? Was 100 years a long time? You haven't even fought once in 10,000 years. You call lying low for 100 years? However, thinking of Han Fei's abnormal growth speed, Han Xian thought that maybe this was Han Fei's path. Only in this way could he grow so rapidly. He thought that if his nephew could split open the heavens, he could even share his experience with him. Of course, Han Xian himself was actually short of resources. Not to mention that kings didn't lack resources. Han Fei had spent hundreds of billions of resources in the Origin Sea, and he hadn't even reached the Pioneer Sea realm yet. Although the Nine Palace Heaven had been dormant for a long time, it couldn't enjoy the resources alone, so in terms of resources, it was still seriously short of resources. Seeing that Han Xian agreed, Han Fei reached out and rubbed Yin'er's head. "Don't worry. Anyway, your brother still has an incarnation here. What are you afraid of? Besides, even the emperors couldn't kill me. He's just Huang Jingyuan. What right does he have to kill me?" "Yin'er," Han Xian asked, "when will we do it?" Han Fei replied, 1 month from today." Han Xian's eyelids twitched. "So soon?" Han Fei nodded. Speed is everything. Han Fei was now very proficient in using the nautical panorama. During the 30 years when Han Fei was in seclusion, he had secretly searched for the God-sealing heaven and found it. Not only did he find it, but he also sneaked around it several times with the Gemini Divine technique. However, because the God-sealing heaven had been closed and the city-protecting array had been activated, it was impossible for Han Fei to break in. This was why Han Fei had to prepare for it for so long. 7 days later. In the dense fog sea, Han Fei stayed alone for a full 7 days, and no one knew what he did. Another half a month later, in a place far away from the fog sea, at least 30 million kilometers away from the God-sealing heaven. At this moment, the God-sealing heaven, the Waterwood heaven, the Demon-Beast Alliance, and the Forest of Horrors. A total of 13 kings had been waiting here. Swish, 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 one figure after another broke out of the void. Among them were Xian Feng of the Witch Pirates, Chen Guangjia of the Gale Pirates, Zhou Chen of the Misfortune Pirates, and Shui Ran of the Red Fire Pirate. These people didn't know the kings of the Yinyang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. Of course, Xian Feng knew him. When she saw Ren Tianfei, she was slightly stunned, and then nodded her head imperceptibly. Ren Tianfei also had mixed feelings. After so many years, he finally met an old acquaintance. At this moment, Chen Guangjiao and the others all gasped. Han Fei didn't lie to us. So many kings? Zhou Chen said, but there are not as many as 25. Shui Ran said, the sword god didn't show up either. Xian Feng said, let's wait. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, the void moved and a golden light flashed. Everyone took a closer look. It was Han Fei. And Shui Ran was surprised. Is this Xie Yu from the flying feather heaven? Chen Guangjiao exclaimed, huh? Is that Li Yingtian from the thoughtless heaven? And Wu Xin from the thoughtless heaven? Zhou Chen said, Jiang Luyun from the white cloud heaven, Gao Bieli from the Lihan heaven, Yang Tsang from the silver moon heaven, Lin Beichen from the beast king heaven. These lost masters of the immortal palace are all here? At this moment, Zhou Chen and the others looked at each other. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed it. When Xie Yu and the others arrived, they first glanced around. When they saw Xian Feng and Zhou Chen, they also had some impression of them. They were just not familiar with each other. However, Shui Ran went straight to Gao Bieli from the Lihan heaven, his face flushed. Palace Master. The kings couldn't help but look at Shui Ran. They only knew that Shui Ran was the captain of the Red Fire Pirates, but they didn't know that Shui Ran was from the Lihan heaven. Gao Bieli nodded slightly and then looked at Han Fei. Is everyone here? 24 kings had gathered here. At this moment, a man in black armor appeared. As soon as this person appeared, Xie Yu and the others were shocked. Han Xian. Han Xian said with a smile, everyone, long time no see. Jiang Luyun said, I didn't expect you to still be alive. Yang Tsang said, Han Xian, how have you been? Everyone got to know each other, and then Han Fei said, Senior Sword God, how is it? Yes. It seems that you really spent a lot of effort to take action this time. Everyone looked sideways and saw a figure slowly solidifying in the void, turning into a person. Who else could it be but the Sword God? The kings were all shocked. Han Fei was strong enough to affect the situation of the chaotic Azure Sea. He actually invited the Sword God to attack the investiture of God's heaven. This was a big bet. When Han Fei went to find them, he had made it clear that this operation was no small matter. And this was also an opportunity for them to let the immortal palaces return. If the chaotic ocean really changed, how could these lost immortal palaces not want to come back? They also knew that the immortal palaces must be a place with a lot of resources. They wanted to come back, but with their strength, how could they resist so many strong masters? If there was a heaven-opening realm cultivator among these lost immortal palaces, they would immediately choose to return to the chaotic ocean. Unfortunately, they chose to leave, and not even one heaven-opening realm cultivator appeared. Han Fei said, Everyone, you have seen the people who came this time. This operation is all king-level cultivators, carrying out a surprise attack. This king and senior sword god will attack the emperor of the investiture of God's heaven, Huang Jingyuan. The rest of you can move in groups. If you encounter a strong king, the strong will take priority, or you can encircle him. I don't believe that the investiture of God's heaven has more king-level cultivators than us. Finally, in this operation, the spoils of war will be divided, and the resources will be distributed according to how much effort you put in. Everyone, this is a battle that will determine the situation of the chaotic ocean, a battle that will change the chaotic ocean. I, Han Fei, said that I will unify the 36 black heavens. I promise that when I control the 36 black heavens, the human race will be one, and we will create a prosperous era for the human race. Chapter 2043. Han Fei's pre-war mobilization was impassioned. In front of the sword god, Han Fei even said that he wanted to unify the 36 Xuantians without any scruples. Han Fei had already raised this question when he went to the heavenly sword heaven. At that time, Han Fei's reason for persuading the sword god was, Only when this place is peaceful will the outside world be prosperous. You should expand your territory and walk the path of a human sovereign. Perhaps Han Fei's words were useless to others. However, it was extremely useful for the heaven-opening stage. In the chaotic Azure Sea, those who could reach the heaven-opening realm were all pioneers of their generation. They all relied on their own abilities to cross the river by groping for stones. Therefore, regardless of whether it was He Daoyuan, Bei Luochen, or the Sword God, all of them were extraordinary. They had relied on their own understanding of the great Tao and their exploration of the origin sea to reach where they were today. How could an ordinary person understand the hardships involved? And the more powerful an expert was, the more they needed to exchange pointers and experience with those in the same realm. This was the path that a monarch needed to take. Since it was possible to become an emperor, no one was willing to just be an emperor. Who didn't want to become an emperor? Who didn't want to achieve immortality? Even if the God of Swords was searching for the path of the sword, he couldn't just shut himself in, right? Therefore, Sword God did not care whether the 36 profound heavens were unified or not. What they cared about was how to get past the Arch Palace and leave this place. The kings weren't stupid. Even the Sword God didn't object to it. Han Fei looked at the Sword God. Senior Sword God, I may need you to help me break the protective array of the divine heaven. If there's a need, I can help you. For this assault, Han Fei had saved a lot of immortal spiritual energy and fierce spiritual energy, which were enough for him to burst out 100 times in his strongest state. This was also the reason why he used up the resources so quickly. Because relatively speaking, he could convert more immortal spiritual energy and fierce spiritual energy. Sword God said, if you attack together, it will be even better. We can break it in one go. Han Fei smiled. No problem. Then Han Fei said, everyone, let's go. In an all-out war like this, there was no such thing as a sneak attack. As long as the great city protecting array was not broken, there was no possibility of a sneak attack. Otherwise, there would be no need for the major immortal palaces to set up a protective formation. This was to prevent people from invading, to warn the various experts in the city, giving them time to react. However, just like the yin-yang skies heaven and earth nature formation, this formation might be able to block the attacks of a king. However, in the face of the power of the heaven opening stage, especially the power of the Sword God, it was very difficult to resist. After all, back when the human powerhouses built the fairy palace, they were still only challengers. Even if they were constantly growing and strengthening the great city protecting formation, it was still difficult for them to rely on the formation to block the heaven opening stage. They weren't people of 9 palace heaven, so they weren't smart and didn't walk the path of formations. Therefore, when Han Fei and the Sword God attacked at the same time, Huang Jingyuan suddenly opened his eyes in the God-sealing heaven. His expression suddenly turned cold, and his voice reverberated throughout the entire God's Bane heaven. Kings, enemies have invaded. Prepare to fight. Huang Jingyuan looked through the void. When he saw Sword God and Han Fei, although he was surprised and confused, he wasn't too shocked. Han Fei was too aggressive and vengeful. He had expected that Han Fei would come looking for trouble. However, Huang Jingyuan never expected that Han Fei would come only 30 years after the trip to the Imperial Palace. In 30 years, Han Fei might not even be able to digest 1/10 of the gains from the trip to the Imperial Palace, let alone the heaven-opening stage. In his opinion, it was impossible for the growth of the sea-opening stage to be so fast. How could someone cross the entire heaven-opening stage in just 50 or 60 years? If you wanted to cross it, you had to have the resources. Strengthening the origin sea, the allocation of resources, and the shaping of the world, how could they be done so easily? However, Han Fei came, and he came with the Sword God. Huang Jingyuan knew that the God's Bane heaven would definitely suffer a great loss this time, but he didn't think that they could defeat the God's Bane heaven, nor did he think that the sword god could kill him. If the sword god had this ability, how could the Grand Pure Wuji still exist? Since the sword god couldn't defeat the Grand Pure Wuji, how could he defeat him? To put it bluntly, if the sword god used the god's arrival technique, the sword god was probably not his opponent. As for Han Fei, even if he was invincible in the sea opening stage and ranked first on the sea opening list, so what? If he couldn't open the sky, the origin sea couldn't blend with heaven and earth, and the aura of the Great Way couldn't run naturally. Even if he could burst out the combat power of the heaven opening stage for a while, he could only fight with Xianqingzi for a while at most. It was even unknown whether he could last more than 100 minutes in the hands of Xianqingzi. Han Fei couldn't hurt him. Swish swish, the sword god had already held a sword in his hand. This sword was glowing red and sealed by the scabbard. On the way here with Han Fei, the sword god's hand had never left the hilt of the sword. Han Fei could feel that the sword god's aura had increased exponentially. The sharp sword intent on his body made him feel that his soul was about to be pierced. Even within 1,000 kilometers of the sword god, Han Fei could feel the sizzling sound on the surface of his body. There were even white marks on his body, and a trace of golden blood appeared. It was cut by the invisible sword aura. It could be seen how terrifying the sword god's sword was. And Han Fei, of course, didn't want to be outdone. Relying on his abundant chaotic qi, he could use the Great Way of Time to reverse time in half an hour. Therefore, when he attacked, Han Fei directly operated the Great Way, opened the invincible eye, performed the law of heaven and earth, swallowed the 5th layer Tao pattern pill, and fished out a 7th grade soul calming pill. From the beginning, Han Fei went all out. He didn't even use the dragon transformation technique. The reason why he didn't use the dragon transformation technique was that there were too many kings here, and they would all submit to him in the future. If he used the dragon transformation technique, the kings would be shocked. Can you still turn into a dragon? Who the hell are you? For these kings, their ability to accept was very strong. There were billions of creatures in the world. What kind of creatures couldn't they accept? But at that time, if Han Fei was allowed to rule the human race, not so many people would be able to accept it. Han Fei's law of heaven and earth was thousands of meters tall. Yes, this time Han Fei was no longer more than 500 meters tall. Otherwise, he would have lived 1,000 years in vain. The real law of heaven and earth was 33,000 meters tall. His was considered ordinary. Han Fei could still become bigger, but there was no need to do so. When he was less than 100,000 kilometers away from the investiture of God's heaven, he heard a clang, and Han Fei saw the sword god draw out his sword from the corner of his eye. Suddenly, his eyes were bloodshot. But this didn't make Han Fei shrink his eyes. A sword poured out like a galaxy hanging upside down, carrying the void for thousands of kilometers, turning into a sword wave. And Han Fei followed up with a divine killing aura. The power of the divine demon was fierce and powerful, like the intertwining of light and darkness. Wherever it passed, the spiral sword tip pierced through layers of ripples. Behind, Han Xian, Ren Tianfei, the masters of the major immortal palaces invited by Han Fei, Zhou Chen, and the others, were shocked as they rushed to catch up. It was understandable that the sword god could exert such terrifying power, but Han Fei had only been in the sea expansion stage for a few years. How could he exert such terrifying power? In the face of such power, even Han Xian felt that even if he was in the third form of the Qianji divine ghost disk, he might not be able to resist it. Even if he did, he would probably be seriously injured. And if Han Xian was seriously injured, the other kings who came here would basically be dead. Zhang Xuanyu chased after them. Seeing Han Fei's domineering scene, he was not shocked but just sighed with emotion. Zhang Xuanyu said, "Quang, you must be strong this time and use your strongest state. I finally understand that only by grabbing enough resources can you become stronger and expand your origin." See crazily. Lu Renquang nodded. My Tao devours the world. I can devour it on the spot. Xia Xiaochan said, Fatty, your origin sea is really strange. You can keep expanding as long as you eat treasures. Lu Renkuang chuckled. It was really difficult to cultivate in the beginning, but after becoming a king, it became faster. Maybe this is the advantage of this Tao. Luo Xiaobai added, Okay, get ready to fight. The four of us will fight together. Remember to stay away from Han Fei and the others. He and Senior Sword God are going to slaughter the Emperor. Don't get close to their battlefield. Xia Xiaochan added, Let's go with Uncle Xian. Uncle Xian is the strongest here. If there is an emergency, at least he can guarantee our safety. Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang nodded. What she said made sense. This was the principle they had always followed. Rumble, boom, crack, crack, crack. Han Fei and the Sword God were naturally much faster than the others. So at the moment when Han Fei and the Sword God attacked, most of the others were still hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, and this was the result of Han Fei and the Sword God deliberately waiting for them. A layer of protective barrier appeared in the formless land of nothingness. But as soon as this barrier appeared, the true appearance of the investiture of God's heaven was revealed. In just less than 3 breaths' time, the protective formation of the city was shattered into pieces. It couldn't resist the full blow of the Sword God and Han Fei at all. Even though the city protecting array was broken and Han Fei's immortal killing aura was exhausted, the Sword God's terrifying sword was still absorbing the power of the investiture of God's heaven's city-protecting array and turning it upward. At that moment, Han Fei grabbed the nautical panorama and pointed it at the sky tens of thousands of kilometers away. With a flip of his hand, Han Fei burst out another immortal killing aura, and then the Sword God rushed out again, roaring, Huang Jingyuan, come out and die.